Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipalities October 29th, 2025 meeting. Madam Clerk, looking around, it looks like we have quorum.
Yes, Chair O'Malley, we have quorum. We have everyone.
All right, thank you kindly. We'll start with the agenda. Item number 1, obviously, is our call to order and the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Community announcements. Are there any community announcements that anyone would like to share?
The chief wants to move Halloween though.
I heard that. He wants all the treats for himself on Friday night. No. Seeing that there's no community announcements, we'll go on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. We have a raft of minutes to approve. So those are from September 24th, October 1st, and October 6th. Can I call for the approval of the September 24th, October 1st, and October 6th minutes? Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Commissioner Bezic-Escanlar. Is there any errors and omissions in the minutes that anyone would like to note? Okay, let's call for the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented? Thank you. Motion carried, unanimous. All right, we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the order of business and the approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Chair O'Malley, there's no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Thank you kindly. Do commissioners have any additions or deletions or modifications to the order of business that they'd like to propose? All right. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Commissioner Mancini. And thank you, Commissioner Hinch, for seconding. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Unanimous. Thank you kindly. Motion carried. I don't see that there's any business arising out of the minutes. We'll move on to item 6, call for declaration of conflicts of interest. Commissioners, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda? Thank you kindly. No, there's no declarations, and so we will proceed as normal. Consideration of deferred business, noted that there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, is there any additional correspondence that's received that you wanted to make note of?
Chair O'Malley, correspondence was received and circulated for items 10.1.1 and 10.1.2.
Thank you. Petitions. Any petitions, Madam Clerk?
Chair O'Malley, no petitions were received by the clerk's office for this meeting.
All right. Does any commissioners have any petitions that they'd like to submit? Okay, none. Thank you. Nothing on 8.3, no presentations, although there are presentations, just under a different agenda item. No information is brought forward, so we'll move on to item number 10, reports and discussion. So we're going to start with 10.1.1, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax Regional Detachment's 2627 resource request. So we'll start by a presentation by Chief Superintendent Duff, and then following that, we'll ask that a motion be put on the floor. And then if the commissioners would like to waive the usual 5 and 3 minute rules for questions for this, we could entertain a motion at that time as well. So we'll wait until after the presentation to do those items. So Chief Superintendent Duff, I'm going to hand it over to you and your team.
Thank you very much. I'll just wait for it to pop up. And I do have new work boots on today, just so I think it's fitting for this presentation. So I will just do a quick outline of the presentation. This resource request will strengthen Halifax Regional Detachment's capacity to develop to deliver police services in our communities, which continue to grow and change. It is the companion to last year's presentation and based upon updated analysis on risks, pressures, priorities, and community engagement, which remain consistent. This falls within our strategic planning and is a portion of the requirements in totality over a period of time and graduated approach. We have previously presented our anticipated future requirements that will continue to be refined as those times approach. It is vital that Halifax Regional Detachment is responsive and can adapt quickly to the needs of our communities and residents. More importantly is the ability to plan, and this resource request is tied to our policing plan, which is our annual performance plan and funding requests. Evidence-based, taking into account the population growth, the increased calls for service, and the types of calls that require targeted and specialized response. Anyway, I can usually run a clicker pretty
Presentation's
well.
over, folks.
Yep.
Nothing to see here.
Any questions? We're
Time to
good.
go.
Thanks very much. So thank you very much. My honor and pleasure to be here today, and I'm fortunate to be supported by a number of people from the RCMP and DOJ to ensure that we are in a position to provide all information required by the board. And to everyone here today, thank you very much. So we were going to be going through the resource request summary. Slide outlines the request for 26-27, the policing metrics, detailed resource request, the Halifax Regional Detachment and the PPSA funding model, and the questions and discussion. The slide outlines the Halifax Regional Detachment, and I'll just shorten that up because I'll be saying it a number of times over the course of the presentation to HRD for 26-27. In totality, we're asking for 9 full-time equivalent regular member positions, 2 positions within our Intimate Partner Violence Unit, 1 position within our Community Action Response Team, and 6 positions for the Eastern Passage Satellite Office. I'll speak to these points in more detail shortly. If approved, this would bring our total HRM funded equivalent strength position to 216. At present, we have 12 positions funded by the province of Nova Scotia in addition to the 12, 1 superintendent position that's funded by the province of Nova Scotia. I spent too long somewhere else, apparently. And then, of course, our public service positions are funded 100% by the province. These requests are grounded in data, frontline experience, and community feedback, and reflect our commitment to proactive, trauma-informed, and community-based policing. This is a historical look at the HRM-funded FTE positions for HRD. And if I'm getting into too many acronyms, please let me know. Since 2010. And 20 positions have been added since 2023, 14 of which were last year. And incorporated within those were 12 to the 2 new satellite offices in Fall River and BLT, 1 to Musquodoboit Traffic, and 1 to the Sheet Harbor Community Office. Just a moment of thanks to the board, commissioners, and to HRM for their support in these officers. The ability to provide service, frontline response, proactive crime reduction, and collaborative approaches with partner services provided has been significantly enhanced due to this investment. This allows our continued involvement in the community safety ecosystem beyond response to preventative and well-being collaborative approach. HRD's annual performance plan sets out our vision to reduce crime, bolster community presence, and enhance collaborative public safety actions. These deliverables demonstrate the areas of priority for HRD's expansion and growth. The resources are required to meet these demands. Each of our funding requests IPV, CART, and the satellite office is tied to initiatives within our strategic plan, as indicated on the slide. We've made a deliberate commitment to listen to the communities we serve so that we can proactively respond in an effective and efficient manner. These resources align with our plan and support our vision to strengthen community integration and collaboration and contribute to the public safety ecosystem, target crime and offenders, and support prevention, intervention, and trauma-informed approaches. This slide depicts the total number of calls for service from 2022 to 2024 and prorated for 2025. The dispatch calls for service and the reactive calls for service. As you can see, the numbers have decreased with a little bit of a blip there in 2023, and the projected number of calls for service this year, which I will get into a little bit more detail in a later slide, is projected to be 62,258, so exceeding last year's volume by some 2,000. And this graph just breaks down the calls for service that our detachment responds to by month. Trending higher again this year in just about every month so far. Noticeable drop from August to September, still higher than the previous 3 years. We'll see where that trend goes, but it's fairly consistent with previous years of the drip or the dip from August into September. Just another depiction of our calls for service from January, September for each year in the dark blue, and then the green indicates the remaining portion of the year, with again projected for 2025 based on the analysis. And again, it's predicted this year we will reach 62,258 calls for service. Quick slide I think we're all familiar with, been in a number of presentations. As we all know, HRM continues to grow, and HRD has a vision for our communities and our ability to impact public safety within the entire municipality. Future growth will require the police services and the community-based needs to be adjusted to the demographic, economic, and societal changes that occur as part of this growth. While the common cop to pop ratio is one measure, the increase in calls for service and pressure upon police, including the complexity of crime, is increasing with the increase in population. And again, we're all aware HRM is growing, and we know this from our data. In the presentation last year, we utilized this slide. We've just highlighted a secondary area to highlight the growth within the Eastern Passage area and the number of developments in that area that are going to impact the population over the coming years, and will support our request for the members for that community office. It's actually really nice to see that map and the growth. So to get into more detail, we're aligning the Board of Police Commissioner pillars of develop, engage, adapt, and evolve into our resource request. Community engagement, crime reporting, statistical analysis, examining population growth, studying societal changes, and our own FTE needs to deliver effective and efficient policing. We're deeply committed to the communities we serve. We believe that our resource request will strengthen core service delivery and provide much needed service enhancements, which will allow us to adapt and evolve along with our communities, with the strategic goal of reducing crime and providing a safe place to work, live, and play. Connection with our HRM communities is key. Effective response will require developing service enhancements to engage with our residences and businesses. We recognize the importance of adapting our community safety approach, enabling us to connect with our partners and community resources who are a part of the collective public safety ecosystem. By evolving our proactive approach, crime prevention programs, and the way we have traditionally responded to calls from a singular central location, we will build trust, collaborate, and reduce crime. Sorry? Oh, okay. If I start yelling, let me know. So we're going to start initially here with our request associated to elevating our intimate partner violence unit by 2 positions. Intimate partner violence was declared a provincial epidemic in 2024. HRD is requesting 2 specialized investigator positions to comprise a member of 4 in total to the IPV unit. 2 previously supported positions have set the foundation for an IPV unit. This unit will also address recommendations that are included within the Mass Casualty Commission and the Desmond Inquiry. Intimate partner violence is a complex issue. We're expanding our investigations to include other patterns and actions, for example, non-fatal strangulation and coercive control, and other related crimes associated to IPV. Population growth will have a direct impact on our ability to respond to these types of crime. Nova Scotia has the Domestic Violence and Intervention Act, emergency protection orders, and peace bond assistance, just an example of a couple areas where an IPV specialized unit can assist. Our IPV unit can assist the frontline members in public safety warrants, tracking warrants, and to assist in locating offenders, arrest warrants, Feeney warrants, and a variety of other judicial authorizations where they become specialized associated to IPV. The budgetary impact for this will be discussed a little bit later. The risk of not supporting these positions is the continued elevation of the complexity of IPV cases that do require specialized assistance and investigative support. With an elevated number within the IPV unit, it will allow for a wider range of immediately support of officers to ongoing and occurring IPV investigations. The future state we envision, and we've engaged in initial discussions of a fully integrated model with HRP, and the chief and I have discussed this associated to potentially at some point down the road, dependent upon our CID review, of potentially looking at that as a viable option. Regardless of future state, the need demonstrated exists and further highlights in the findings of the 2 positions last year that have been operational since June. So over a period of 4 months, we've made considerable ground. The current review is identifying gaps in investigational activities. The current resources can provide review and advice and have been involved in investigations and assistance in more of the complex cases. The enhanced ability to assume a greater investigative role within a wider range of IPV investigations will assist the watches in many areas. Enhanced capability within this specialized area will elevate consistency in investigation and more investigations being undertaken inclusive of follow-up. The residual effect is reducing the investigational load on the frontline watch member, allowing the call response of those members to have more time available for proactive and crime prevention and reduction activities by reducing some of the burden of the IPV investigations. 2 further positions elevate this aspect, reduce risk, and allow for greater level of police-centered offender management. Allowed continued review of investigations into IPV-related offenses, and widening the spectrum into the coercion and control aspect too, to be considered during the investigation. The relationships built to this point are resulting in requests from outreach and community groups in safety planning to ensure there's a police officer lens provided to the safety planning done by other agencies. This is the statistics associated to the IPV since 2021 within HRD. The total number of incidents is based on calls for service related to IPV. The high-risk files are based on the ODERA risk assessment process, which is utilizing a consistent risk assessment process was one of the recommendations of the the Desmond Inquiry. As a new unit, IPV is conducting a file review to ensure domestic occurrences have been flagged in a consistent way, which will allow for future training as well. The vision for the unit is more collaboration with non-government organizations to bridge the gap for victim survivor support, identify risk and put measures in place for prevention of further escalation, effectively work with PPS to identify cause for dismissals and withdrawn IPV-related files, offender management and support to decrease recidivism. Study flags are being utilized to get to a greater extent, which are resulting in more accurate statistics of the numbers associated to IPV. Any So I'm going to move on to our request to CART and provide some of the background to the CART request. Excuse me one moment. So every position within our resource ask is intentional, so we can continue to build capacity for safe, more effective policing outcomes. The CART unit provides critical frontline coordination, highlighting trust, communication, which are key to public safety and public confidence. It responds proactively to and collaboratively with partner service providers to mitigate risk and elevate positive outcomes based on consistent collaboration. A number of areas that the CART team is involved in on a day-to-day basis are homelessness, particularly associated to building relationships within encampments, and collaborative and cooperative community actions. Our CART teams are dedicated to working with other units internally to identify prolific offenders and develop strategies with partners to reduce recidivism. Secondary primary focus, youth crime. Presently, a CART member is assigned to each school within HRD. However, the current capacity means the youth focus at present would be elevated with the addition of another officer. Improved community relationships and interagency collaboration is the focus, and the partnerships developed to enhance community safety. Additional CART resources will allow elevated engagement with the seniors population in a variety of areas, highlighted so often by various organized efforts through cyberspace to defraud seniors. We're seeing more and more of these occurrences reported. This elevation will certainly allow us to be better positioned in an age-friendly community. The partnerships are highlighted by some of the activities. If you look at the photo there of joint patrols with Department of Natural Resources, working with the ATV clubs and some of the pressures there to address issues that have been identified. The risk is that CART is involved in the development of action plans to directly impact youth and community issues through collaboration and partnership. The additional position will allow further development of multi-agency cooperation in addressing specific community-identified matters. Their engagement is exceeding capacity, and the lack of additional resource will impact their ability to meet the continuing and elevating community needs. The goal is to continue to emphasize prevention, collaboration, and coordination, and the strategic use of resources and partnership. It's just a quick picture of the North Preston office. I'm going to move along now to the resource request associated to the Eastern Passage Satellite Office. So this is a photo of the North Preston office, which has been highlighted in several studies as the community-based model at the community level, and is community policing based and aligned with mass casualty recommendation and beyond that demonstrate community safety enhancement. So that's the three areas we are seeking support for additional resources. I'm going to just touch on the funding here. The identified cost to us has been updated since the presentation. The 2025-26 per officer cost is $216,080. That was provided to us by by DOJ. The anticipated cost at the current billing process, although we have been certainly indicated that prior to fiscal year end, there's going to be a new process in place, is $1.94 million. And as noted, anticipated of a different billing process by year end, of which we are unaware of what that will be at this point in time. And the way that we're fortunate to have Haley Crichton here. If there's any questions on this slide beyond my explanation, she'll be available to answer them. So this is just a clarification. And I'll explain my level of understanding, which if there's questions beyond that, I will certainly refer them to Haley. So overall policing in Nova Scotia, the provincial government pays 70%, 30% is covered federally, 70-30 split. Within Nova Scotia, about 1/3 of the positions are centralized services, which are paid by the province of Nova Scotia. Roughly 2/3 are the the PPSA side, where the funding or the billing goes back to the municipality. Of that, 70% is paid by the municipality, 30% is paid by the provincial government. So maybe I'll open up that part to any questions right now. Just because I saw some looks that perhaps.
Commissioner Moore,
Yeah,
did you want to make a comment?
You had two 70-30s in there. There's only really one 70-30. The provincial, the PPSA, 100% of the PPSA, 70% of that is paid for by the provincial government, 30% of it's paid by the federal government.
Correct.
That costing, that 70% costing, is the same costing that the provincial pays for shared services officers, is the same costing, same amount that HRM pays for that costing.
Okay, I'll have to defer to. That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's what I was trying to say. Or I'll claim that.
Just say, yeah. that.
Yes, perfect.
You had a second 70-30 in there in relation to
Oh, okay.
the second one, so there's not two 70-30s.
Okay.
Question, please. Question.
Chief Superintendent, Commissioner Akindoju.
The cost of the budget is what you just said. And I'm going to say it differently because I'm basing it on the facts. I've done my own paperwork here. My understanding as at today, you have 220 plus staff, plus 37 in public sector.
Yes.
This funding, their funding is 94% HRM and 6% province. I want to understand that. Those are the facts that you wrote in your summary. I put it out from the summary. Patrolling, 95% HRM, 43% population. But the breakdown of the funding is 30% federal. And then, of course, we're talking about 100%. We have 70% left. Of that, 1/3 is the province, and 2/3 would be HRM. Am I correct? I put it at 64% and 24%. I extracted this from your budget summary. You want me to repeat that? It was in the budget summary prior to this.
In,
And it's in line with what he just said. He said, we're talking about 100% funding, okay? 30% of the funding is federal, correct? 30% of funding is federal. Therefore, 70% is between HRM and the province. The province takes 1/3 of the 70, and HRM takes 2/3 of the
No.
70. Okay, that's what you said. That's my understanding, which is 46% and 24% concurrently. If that is not right, I want to be corrected.
I will defer that to.
So we have lots of experts in the room who can probably comment on this, and I'm going to ask
That shouldn't be
Haley
too
if she would
difficult.
like to come forward and share the provincial perspective. Thank you, Haley.
So I think what often gets confused is that. So I think ultimately what often gets confused is that we're talking about the per officer cost. So I just want to be very clear that when we take out the 30% from the federal government, we're just going to park it and not deal with it for the
Correct.
purposes of this conversation. So we park it to the side. We take the total cost of the RCMP budget for the entirety of the division, so for all of H division, and then we divide that cost by the number of sworn police officers. So I'll use the number 100 just to exemplify what I mean.
Correct.
So of those 100 police officers, approximately 33 of those are assigned to centralized services. Those are the police officers that we pay for. So we're paying the same per officer cost rate as the municipality is, but we pay the per officer rate times the number of people who are in those centralized services. The remaining 66 are those positions that would be assigned to municipalities, or what we call detachment serving members. So you pay the per officer rate times the number of sworn police officers who are located in Halifax Regional Municipality. So you pay the full per officer rate
Correct.
for all of those sworn officers, and then we pay the full per officer rate for all those in centralized services, which can include specialized services, but also some admin, some financial. There are other positions kind of included in that. So that's how we separate between the provincial investment and the municipal investment. And again, I just want to repeat as well, this billing mechanism is not efficient, it's not easy, and it's overly complicated for what it's trying to do. That is why prior to the end of this fiscal year, the province will be instituting a new billing mechanism that will be far more, respectfully to those who made decisions past, but commonsensical, where you can look at it and it's a tool and it makes far more sense and it's easier to predict the future by using the tool that we're intending to implement. So we're still going through that process now. But for the purposes of providing a budget forecast for next year, we have to use this billing mechanism. And so you're paying the number of sworn officers times the per officer rate.
Okay, I can make this easy because there's no point for the Board of Commissioners talking about what they do not understand. There's no point. It's a waste of time. And with all respect, I just want to make it easy. We're talking about cost. It's 100% cost. 30% is held by federal government. Forget about it. We have 70% left. We're talking about Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
We're talking about RCMP. Of that 70%, can you tell me what percentage? I'm saying the percentage held by HRM is 46%. I can be wrong, I can be right. And 24% is held by the province. Further that, I want to prove that based on the document that I have, 94%, I'm not talking about a region, of sworn police officers plus 37 public officers is paid, 94 is paid. Their power, the percentage you get there is paid by HRM. So there's a little bit of confusion here. And if we don't understand, we cannot educate on cost or budget. It doesn't make sense. So if that is the, I have a couple of few things talking about the budget process. Sometimes it's a waste of our time or your time or the public's time. And that's why the public do not understand. We're talking about something that is simple, cost over revenue. So let's make it very simple so that people can understand. We're talking about 100% cost here. What percentage of that cost is held by HRM? Because that's the only percentage that we can govern over.
Yeah, so if we take it to the easiest calculation, it's just the per officer rate, which is the $217,000 for 24-25. We multiply that by the number of sworn officers that are serving in HRM. There are some exclusions to that. For example, the chief superintendent position is a supervisory position, so that position is paid for by the province of Nova Scotia. Same with the superintendent position, which would be Superintendent Mosier at this time.
Okay.
Those positions in supervisory are covered by the
Thank you.
province.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My next question, therefore, what percentage of HR cost is of the total expense cost of the RCMP?
So the per officer cost, because it's a breakdown of
I
the
would
total
assume HR
cost.
cost with this human salaries is what you call officer cost. correct?
Salaries, it's an average of the salaries included in the per officer cost. So right now, that rate is approximately 113,000 for part of the per officer rate, 113. We can look it up, but essentially of the 217,000, approximately 113,000, if Danielle doesn't correct me, is directly correlated with salaries.
Yes.
If we remember that the per officer cost is rank agnostic. So that rate is the same for all officers included. What's also included in that rate is the salary cost for public service employees as well. So the civilian detachment serving positions are included.
So,
Sorry, I apologize, 117, she corrected me.
so when you use the word per officer cost,
Mhm.
is it 100% wages or other expenses?
No,
Can
and
you
we
give us a
can,
breakdown of what are the major expenses other than wages that make up per officer cost?
absolutely, and we
Thank
can
you.
actually provide a handout to this as well, because it's everything that how we kind of colloquially say it is, it's everything that makes a police officer a police officer.
Correct.
So salaries, benefits, infrastructure, so the buildings that they work out of, the vehicles, fuel that go in the vehicles, the operations and maintenance for those buildings, public service employees are included there, health services, financial services. Essentially, it is
I get it.
it's a catch-all. So everything that makes a police organization, it's
Thank
almost
you
like an
so much.
off-the-shelf.
You can see my understanding, my
Absolutely.
confusion here.
Yes, sir.
So honestly, at this time for RCMP, it will be difficult for me because I've tried as much as possible to contribute to this budget. I'm an accountant and I've been in financing for over 40 years. So this should be clear to me.
Yes,
It is
sir.
not clear to me. It is therefore going to be very difficult for me to adjudicate on it based on how it's being presented.
Absolutely.
Because per officer cost includes other things that we have no right to adjudicate upon. You see? So everything is, if we get to HRP, I will talk about this because it's clearly broken down and we can speak to it. Thank
Absolutely.
you. That's my case.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And again, that is why the province is looking to change the billing
Appreciate it.
mechanism
Thank you
in
so
its
much.
entirety so that this kind of confusion is avoided, because you almost have to unlearn accounting principles to understand the budget.
Thank you. Let's do a little bit of a reset. Let's go back to the chief superintendent and ask, in terms of the presentation materials that you wanted to share, is there additional content you wanted to walk us through?
No, really, that was the presentation. That
Okay.
was these,
All right.
the reasons supporting each of the requests for this year. The 1, the 2, and the 6 for a grand total of 9, with the overall cost of the officer in of 1.944, I believe, and which actually breaks down to in year 1, because of the staffing process, we have a number that was provided of the yearly $3.49 per tax bill, $3.49 per tax bill is what the total impact would be on year 1.
Excellent. Thank you.
And that's
Chief.
for a 6-month period of time.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. So what we'll do now is we'll move to get one of the commissioners to put the motion on the floor, and then we can have the discussion on the actual budget. I'm sure there'll be lots of Q&A, and I should have noted that we do have Haley here, obviously, from the Department of Justice, and we have our CFO from HRM here, Jerry Blackwood, and as well Rachel. So we've got a lot of knowledgeable people in the room to have a good dialogue. So let's start with the motion on the floor for the HRD's budget or service enhancement request.
I'll do it.
Vice Chair Kent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality recommend that the HRM Budget Committee support the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax Regional Detachment, RCMP HRD, resource request for additional 9 regular member positions as part of the budget deliberations for the 2026-27 operating budget as set out in attachment 1 of the staff report dated October 16, 2025. So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. Can we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Commissioner Mancini. So now the next question I'll ask is, the procedural rules are typically 5 and 3 minutes. Do the commissioners want to waive that for this dialogue so they can have more than 5 or 3 minutes in a subsequent round?
I would appreciate that. I think that there's always
Okay.
benefit to making sure commissioners are well informed and have their questions answered.
Very good. So, Madam Clerk, do we need a?
We could still stay with the 5 because that allows each of us to come back, but gives us a little bit of time to get our first set of questions or position out.
So 5 and
Just
subsequent
continuous 5.
Typically it's 5, then 3, 3, 3, 3.
Oh,
Right.
okay, that's fine too. So we start with 5,
Okay, we want to leave the rule as is.
but the difference is 5 and 3 stops normally.
Oh,
In
I
this
see.
case,
And-
we're
and
gonna go
allow a
5,
subsequent.
3, 3, 3, 3.
Okay.
Tony's the only one that's gonna need that. So,
All right. Madam Clerk, we have a motion up there. Can I ask one of the commissioners to put the motion on the floor?
I did,
Oh,
and
but
it's seconded.
for changing though, the rules of procedure.
Okay, I'll move that.
Okay. And we have a seconder for changing the rules of procedure?
Thank you.
Thank you, Yemi. All right. All those in favor of the motion to change the rules of procedure to relax and allow more than subsequent rounds? Thank you kindly.
Aye.
Any objections? Seeing none, that one is carried. All right, so now that we have that motion on the floor, we can start the discussion.
I'll speak to it.
And Vice Chair Kent, would you like to kick things off?
I will. Thank you very much. So, well, welcome to the budgeting of the Halifax Regional Detachment, RCMP budgeting deliberation. I have yet to see a discussion without some of the narrative around the complexity of the current model. And as much as we are frustrated today, I don't wish, I wish good luck to Haley and the folks at the justice system in creating a new one. I certainly look forward to it. I have a question around that. I'm going to finish my comments and utilize my 5 minutes, but I wonder if Haley can just let me know or let us know, just to be very clear, your goal is to have it in place before the budget deliberation at Halifax HRM is complete, and we would apply the new one to the budget for 26-27, or is that what I heard? You didn't quite say it like that, but you talked about the budget process. Okay, yeah.
There, just slide your chair in here.
Whoa, Jesus. Sorry, Counselor. So our intent is to have the new billing mechanism in place and approved before the end of this fiscal year so that we can apply it as of April 1st of 26-27.
Yes,
So
okay.
we will communicate as soon as we can because we do recognize that there is a difference in budget process timelines for the municipality and the province. So we're going to try
Yes.
and get us as aligned as we can before your budget deliberation.
Okay, so what that means for us, though, is, for me, it's a matter of us considering the impact of what these requests have on the service delivery ultimately. Because as well, the complexity of what we have here at this board is that we make a recommendation to council. Council then choose on it and, and spits it out in some iterative. And if it's not exactly what we have recommended, the whole thing comes back and we start that again. So by that time, if we have the chance to do it, we'll be under maybe a new really, it's going to come down to a new cost per officer. It might stay the same. We don't know. We won't know until they get there. I'd like to speak to the request, though. I have been in and out of the public safety realm for more than 20 years in a number of different roles. And as a mother raising kids in a community of Eastern Passage, I can speak directly to the impact and the benefit of having that satellite office with 6 officers. When I first started raising my kids there was a significant amount of criminal activity. We had a high population of young people who entered the justice system. We have many families who are still there, can remember it as well. Then as an elected official, I worked hard with our police officers I remember my first or second year in council, I think I helped develop 11 different neighborhood watch programs. I was very proud of that. And that was because of the activities that were happening in the community, and they were very successful. I went on to other roles, and I think over the course of time it changed. But part of what came out of that as well was the first community officer dedication to an office space in Horizon School. It was Tallahassee at the time. And then that became number of different versions over the years of my political career, including till I came back. When I came back here in 2020, those had all disappeared, but they were different. They were community offices, and then offices that were volunteer space, working with officers, but not at any time were they able to have a space where they were resourced in a way that had dedicated people staying in the community all the time. And you can see in most communities the ebbs and flows of the activities that would require our officers to be in and around that community. Response times certainly are things that we have to be mindful of. Over the last couple of years, it's been a very, very difficult year for the number of gun activity responses. Some had dire consequences. We've had a number of young people even in as young as 11, involved in creating hit lists and bringing I guess BB guns and things to school, and with an intent to hurt people. It's been tough. It's been tough on the community. And the one thing that continues to come back to me as an elected official and our MLA and all those who are in a leadership role around, we don't see them around here enough, and we don't have access to them. And I think that's the model when I came back to the RCMP, was that community response. And I think that's the most important piece here that we're talking about. One additional member to the CART team really can make a tremendous difference. And a satellite office, the ability to get ahead of those situations, the ability to create partnerships in public safety, that's our priority that we have within HRM around how do we police and how do we make safe communities, and how do we create safe public spaces. And that this is the model. This is it. I've seen it in other cities. I've watched it develop successfully in the North Prestons. And HRM supported the addition of the other 2 satellite offices last year. I believe as we grow, we're going to see potentially more need for that. And I would support that at that time. As I support this one, I supported the one for Fall River and for Beachville. And I hope that our members here would support that for the Eastern Passage area, despite the fact that I live there. The core delivery of service comes about successfully. I know I'm over time through partnerships. having a satellite office, which, by the way, I've already sort of started creating some partnerships for a space, a physical space. You know, we can get there, we can do that. So assuming that there's some support here, I'll leave it there. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair, for going on and on.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kent. I'm going to hand it over to our solicitor who would like to make a procedural comment observation.
Just picking up on what Commissioner Kent said, there's just to remind the board, there's a different legislative procedure for the RCMP budget and the regional police budget. With respect to the police budget, the regional police budget, the Act provides that the chief has to submit a budget to the board. The board then looks at its functions under the Act and to see if that budget conforms to that. And then once they've done that, it's then submitted to council for approval. Under the existing bylaw, the council chews on that, to use Commissioner Kent's words, and can refer it back, or are supposed to refer it back holus bolus to the board if they're not happy with it. That's the state of the existing bylaw. Changes are hopefully in the works, but they're not approved yet by the province. With respect to the RCMP, there's no obligation for the board to do anything with respect to it. However, out of tradition, it's been the tradition of the RCMP to come before the board and the board to make a recommendation to council based on that, right? And then council can chew on it again, and they could decide if they wanted more input from the board, they could send it back here, but they don't have to. There's no provision for that. So just so we're clear on the differences between the two.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Superintendent, thanks for the presentation. I first of all have questions about the intimate partner violence additional officers. So first of all, thank you for continuing to make that a priority. As you alluded to in your presentation, we have in the province, and we've all agreed to that there is a crisis when it comes to intimate partner violence. So it is extremely important that both our police forces maintain this being a priority. I'm trying to understand, you mentioned that you're looking at 2 specialized positions. So these specialized positions, do they come trained, or do the bodies come in place, you then train them and they leave specialized? I'll give you a couple of questions and then if you don't mind. I'm going to watch my time here. And you may have alluded to this before, but how many are presently in the intimate partner violence unit right now? And you shared I like the fact you shared some stats around that. And so I'm wondering on a regular basis when we come back to these meetings, the Board of Police Commission, so could we have stats continued on around IPV? I'm really intrigued by if I heard you correctly, the conversation is going on about potentially an integrated unit between RCMP and HRP. So if we maybe expand that a little bit, that would be appreciated. Are there, in the same topic of IPV, are there successes in other jurisdictions when it comes to maybe having different techniques or approaches that we're not using here? Is there a particular force that's doing, an area that's doing really well and attacking this crisis that we're having? And are they doing something that we're not doing if that is the case? And those are my questions on that. I have questions about the community action response team later, but if you would mind answering those, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Over to you, Chief Superintendent.
Thank you very much. I think I've caught them all.
Okay.
Come trained. The easy answer to that is yes, because when we create new positions, oftentimes we advertise them and we have the ability to ask for CVs.
Oh,
So
okay.
people are
So
able
you're
to
looking for
demonstrate
folks.
past experience and whatnot. Any new position has to be advertised. You get the applicants, you have the ability.
So they may be coming from anywhere across the country then?
They could, yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah.
2 now, 2 based on the last year's. We started, I don't want to get too much into budget for the reasons that were obvious earlier, but The lag in staffing positions basically means that we plan on the first year of half a year. However, we started our IPV back in June. So that's, the two positions have been filled since then.
So in total, if these were approved, we'll have four in total, okay?
The integrated piece is we're having the initial conversations. We're planning to do a review as we presented in our earlier higher level budget of examining the CID and determining, what is the most efficient way to do it. We deal with a few geographic issues where support,
Of course, yeah. Yep.
call it specialized, but that type of support to the front line might impact beneficially, areas that are outlying. It'll be under assessment. The need remains the same though, regardless of where the
Understood.
positions lie.
Is there a timeline on where you'll have a better understanding of if that's the direction you are going into? And is it, you're looking at it now, but do we see something in 6 months' time that we have more information or a direction that you've made to either proceed or not to proceed?
A couple of factors there that, depend upon the positions approved, depends upon our ability to be flex and pivot if things change or if a better way of doing business. If there's a better way of doing business in an integrated manner, working in the same office together, we will do that.
Okay.
And I think you asked about if there's an example.
Is there a best
similar-
practice in other areas where successes and that things that they may be doing that we're not doing?
Okay. I was aware of the one, but there's a second one now. Royal Newfoundland Constabulary has a similar type process, been quite successful, and so does Saanich Police Service in BC. And they were some of the basis upon which our last year's and follow-up to this year's presentation was presented.
Okay, good.
So they do exist, and as a best practice, essentially.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that, Chief Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, talking now about the presentation. Chief, thank you so much for your detailed presentation. You articulated clearly what you needed, why, and when. You see, for all of us sitting down here, who out of us would be better to tell us what the LCMP need other than you and your team? You've done justice to this. Haley, I want to thank you too as well. What my worry is because I want to support whatever you ask for, because I've been in countries where police do not have what they need. And I'm going to repeat it. This is my 4th year here, and every year I've said it. You run towards what we run away from. But just like Commissioner Becky said, how a financial guy like me, I do not understand the impact. You see, we're talking about taxpayers' money. That's why we're here. So we can advise the mayor and other. We're not commission. We're not politicians, or I am not a politician. I'm a private sector. I look at return on investment. Why and when should I invest? So if I was on your board, I would not be bothered about how many more men, equipment, or offices you want. I want to understand how much it will cost us so that we can understand if we can continue to fit that cost. That's what budget is all about. So my only worry, and I think Haley has alluded to that, and that's why I'm thanking her so much, is that we do not know the dollar impact of all these things that we're talking about and how it impacts the taxpayers' money. You know, I never intervene when I go to grocery with my wife. I only pick it and put it in the car. She knows what we need. It looks like a joke, but it's true. It makes for a better home for both of us. So you, and I respectfully, the way you've articulated all the things you need, I 100% support it, 100%. But if I go out there and somebody's pointing their fingers at me, budget this, that, I cannot say what this impact is dollar-wise. So my ask is if you could do us a favor. See, the whole budget, the law has said it. I didn't know the law said that. And that's a smart guy, that we can just hear, but we have nothing to say. It's true on the RCMP. When we get to HRM, you see my discussion on that, on actual dollar value, because we do not know why you want this or that. So if you can help us, and I'm going to close here, help us bring what is the dollar value. Once we know I tried as much as possible this year to arrive at the formula. Again, I couldn't get through. The dollar value that the HRM will be depending upon us to advise them to proceed with or not. And if I have the dollar value, I would love to have it year over year. That is in probably 3 years. So for me, it's the incremental cost that I want to consider. I rest my case.
Okay. I've just been informed that there's a detailed email of the cost breakdown that will be circulated. So I can tell you, and again, I'm cautious in talking money because I have the current per officer value, that the cost to the taxpayer in a complete year will be $1.944 million, which breaks down to, I've got it somewhere, which breaks down to, based on those numbers, keeping in mind there's a new billing mechanism coming as it stands today, which breaks down in year one of $3.49 per tax bill for half a year and $6.98 for the full year per tax bill.
So you see, you said it in year one. Let's go back to year zero. That's actual cost. So when we're talking about that, I would have looked at that in 4 years' time and see, okay, on a rolling quarter basis, are we able to afford that? Because you see, we look at the budget, absolutely. The cost you're asking for, the incremental cost of 1 point, there are other costs that you've saved during the year as well. So your percentage increase, for example, for HRM is 1%, it's 1.5%. We're going to sit down here for hours and months and talk about 1.5% incremental cost. For me, makes no sense. So yes, I know the absolute value of 1.9. What does that translate to year over year in the next 4 years? That's what we can say, oh, it's affordable. It's not affordable. What other costs are we going to bear? What other things are we going to do? You get what I'm saying? That's when budget starts to have the meaning and impact on decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. What was there a additional comment that you wanted to offer to the Commissioner's comments?
No, thank you
Okay.
very much. I'm basically providing the information that was provided to me on the per officer cost.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to Commissioner Bezic-Escalante.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chief Superintendent and your team for all the details today. I'm a doctor, not an accountant, so I don't have as many smart questions as Commissioner Akindoju has. My question, I guess, question number one. So the only thing that's on the motion right now is for the increase. So we don't actually look at the baseline amount and make any comment on whether the baseline amount is appropriate or anything. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I guess I'll just make the comment that from my understanding, and as a doctor, not an accountant, is I am interested in value for money and not just what we would get out of the increase, but also what we're getting for the overall spend currently. And I think there are some things that are missing to me, at least, to understand what we're getting for the money that's being spent. And I don't have a good answer here as to like what metric I had in mind as far as what would capture that. But I guess to add on to Commissioner Akindoju's ask on things that would make his understanding better, things that would make my understanding better would be like, and you had the stats in the semi-annual report that you presented a few weeks ago now. I wonder if there is anything that we could be looking at, like clearance rates or response times or even qualitative impressions from counselors like Commissioner Kent just saying how much things had improved since the neighborhood stations or community the CART or the neighborhood satellite offices had been opened. I mean, on its face, everything that you said, Chief Superintendent, as far as keeping pace with the evolution of police services, with the growth in population, and what Commissioner Kent said about how much things had improved in the other locations that have satellite offices, that all makes good sense to me. I guess it's just from a perspective of looking at what have we gotten so far with the money we've put in, and what are we looking at to add to it with the 1.94 million that you're asking for. It's just hard for me to make that determination without having that background. And I understand now that we're not actually looking at the overall spend, so perhaps it's a moot point. But bottom line, maybe this is a conversation we'll have to have offline, is what sorts of things could be brought besides just the hard numbers to help us understand that value for money thing. You know, there are some metrics like the Canadian Police Performance Metrics Framework. I had a few references here that could be ideas to look at. So I guess I don't have a question for you other than to ask, perhaps this is something that we can discuss further offline down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hinch.
Oh, there it is. Thank you, Chair. So for me as a commissioner and a counselor, I always revert back to, you know, what my residents are asking and what they're looking for and whatnot. And of course, you know what they say. I'm not even going to get into that right now. But the thing is that I can't believe we're here and we're not even a year in. That's what surprises me, that we already had the budget and now we're back here and we're discussing the budget again. And not having a clear understanding of what last year's budget has actually accomplished. You know, it's hard to understand or even to wrap my head around, to think about even if, you know, coming to this budget and approving this budget. I still have questions. So one of the questions that I did have was the special investigators position. Actually, I'm sorry, Commissioner Mancini has answered a lot of my questions pretty much. He is like he's in my head. So those are some of the questions that I did have. So I'm not going to even repeat those. And then Commissioner Akadosha, he just gets me so hyped up, but yet I'm just so, I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I don't, you know, the numbers that you guys laid out is somewhat difficult for me to understand how it goes and how it works and everything. So I'm still learning this process. I really am. So I'll just leave it at that. So thank you.
Commissioner Carter.
Yeah, my questions are about more about the outcome than anything else. So first off, the IPV is an absolute must because Nova Scotia's demonstrated over the past couple of years, it's almost epidemic, the problem and the violence that comes from that. So I'm very happy to see that, and the MCC has asked for it as well. So, but on the CART side, just a question is, will it improve the accessibility for the public to get access to police officers in the office? As an example, what are the hours? Because most people work, so how will it be easier for them to access that? And then I have one more, and then we can go from there. The other is, will it get the public more involved? Because in policing, if the public's not involved, it's pretty hard to solve things. So will it also get the public more interested, more involved? Like Commissioner Kent talked about was the other projects that were on the go, Neighborhood Watch and things like that. But will it help with that? And the final one is, are these things able to be tracked so that we can find out the success story from it in the end?
Chief Superintendent.
Through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. Access through CART in an office, probably not, but community offices, yes. Definitely, clearly, absolutely. Public more involved. Right now, CART is the organizers of our community engagement sessions. So that's the opportunity for the community to become involved, and they're also the ones who develop the relationships with various community groups and address any of the issues and participate in the town halls and those type of things. So the answer to that is yes. Tracking. Everything we do is tracked in one way or another to have specific metrics and percentages. Of course, associated to crime, we can do that based on clearances. These other things, they're more, they are tracked. We do track our success stories because, it's good to know what they are. And we also debrief when things don't go quite right, because when they don't go quite right, we want to improve them. So I think the answer to that is yes as well, depending what type of format, if that makes any sense. And we are hoping within the next couple of years to be able to have the bridge from the Versadex into our HR, our GDPRM, which will also give us another indication at a statistical level of need.
Good. Thank you.
Sorry, could you clarify that acronym, GDPRM? What does that stand for?
General Duty Police Resourcing Model.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm going to switch with Vice Chair Kent because I have a few questions I wouldn't mind asking. Thank you. In the first, I wanted to clarify the slide. I didn't quite understand slide 12, which was the domestic violence occurrences. Basically, over each year, there was.
Andrea, are we able to put the slides back up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next slide. There we go. Perfect. I didn't quite understand this slide. So it says HRIPV, which is the blue bar. And basically since 2024, so last year we established an IPV unit. We assigned 2 resources to it. Are those staffed today?
Yes.
And approximately when did they get staffed?
June.
June. So just recently. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So these values in this chart, what is the, I'm not the best with color. We'll call it the off yellow color there. What does that represent? It says total IPV. I don't quite understand what that means versus the blue.
That is the total number of intimate partner violence calls for service received. The blue, the aqua, is the total number of high risk that are assessed based on the risk assessment process called ODERA.
Okay, so those, would that be fair to say that those are the kind of the active in-flight cases that the team is looking into managing?
They're the ones that, based on a risk assessment, present the most risk to public safety, victim safety, et cetera.
Okay. Right. Okay. So today, that number for the 2025, is that a projected or that is year to date?
Year to date.
Okay. So one can only assume that the number is probably going to be north of 150, 160. Okay. And so of the 2 resources today, they have 150 some active cases, individuals. How does that get managed? Is that broken down, spread across?
Okay, so at present, the vast majority, and I don't have a percentage number, but just about all of them are managed by the watch members at this time. And the IPV unit is doing the review process, providing guidance, direction, and reasonable assistance to ensure the investigation's done in totality.
Okay,
They've
so
also gone
are they
back-
performing more of a supervisory advisory role to those in the field?
Yes, both positions are supervisory at this point in time.
Okay. So the knowledge of specialized resources isn't out in the watch resources. It's with these team members providing advice to the individual members in the field.
At present, yes.
Okay.
And
Did
they
you see
work
that
with-
changing at all? Or
I do. With two, it would be hard to go beyond what we're doing now and the involvement in the very complex cases that are. With four, that immediate direct involvement would generate shifting, longer hours of service to the watches, and more involvement in the actual active investigations at the time.
right. So I'll ask a question, and I know it's something that's on the books in terms of reviewing CID, and I'm trying to understand if the whole IPV function should potentially be integrated between the two services, and that we should look at what that model is and what it should be, how it should be run, how it should be operated, how it should be staffed before we hire more additional resources in the unit. And so I'll just throw that out there, maybe to both chiefs to talk about, because I know it's on the plan, the horizon to look at CID, and whether, at this stage, do you see potentially IPV coming inside of that? And maybe you could offer some comments on that.
Thank you. Very valid. However, regardless of that review, the service, the need exists. So ultimately, wherever these resources are housed as we go through this process, they're required. I think that's the best way they're a needed entity. The best way operational can be determined. However, the resource and support to the front line they're providing at present can be well expanded with additional resources.
Make a comment?
Yeah, to the chair, I would just add that we will be undergoing an extensive CID review. We really haven't looked at CID in, well, probably forever. And in terms of, that is, one of the, true integrated units that deal with our, for the most part, our high level sort of incidents. Frontline response is always going to be integral when it comes to IPV, because those are the ones that work 24/7 in terms of, and they'll be the people that respond initially to begin with, regardless of what the CID model ends up looking with. No different now than in terms of robberies or homicides, all those things. Our frontline response people are the folks that are in fact the first responders. Part of the review will look at what level of support is needed or not needed in terms of ensuring that those investigations are carried out appropriately in terms of, we put significant, educational training and stuff into the folks around investigating, intimate partner violence. We've been doing it for a long time. I think we're pretty good at it. The majority of our, and we were all here for the presentation from Dolly Mosier that day, that lengthy presentation from Dolly Mosier that day that went on, that really laid out, what it is that her team does, on the back end stuff, which would be similar to what some of these folks do in terms of, so it's hard to say what will the future state look like. I mean, that's the part I think we're going into this eyes wide open in terms of, what is the future, what is the state of the possible. And, but, as, Commissioner Mancini brings up, we recognize IPV as being an important part of, police response, and whatever that looks like. It's hard to say, but certainly, recognizing a focus in the direction and some, eyes on that is a good thing.
Members, just as the chair privilege, I'm going to offer the chair his next 3 minutes so that he doesn't have to flip chairs, if that's agreeable. And he is the chair, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess a related follow-up question to that, because is in terms of the organizational review that's going to be done and assessing the needs and the resource requirements. Last year, we funded non-sworn member resources with HRP to help further in the intimate partner violence spectrum. So working with the offenders themselves, those were non-sworn members. Have we looked at, considered, as opposed to hiring additional costly sworn members, specialists who are non-sworn members, who could potentially be in the roles for longer periods of time, as opposed to to act as an advisory to members of the watches, as opposed to sworn members?
Through the chair to the chair. Yes, we've had those discussions, and they're tied significantly into the victim services. Our vision is to have our IPV police officers performing police function within those investigations that police officers are required to do. And when we say offender management, we mean offender management in the traditional sense of checking to ensure and helping offenders be successful in release conditions and that type of thing, we've demonstrated in the past that that type of management of offenders reduces recidivism. So it's post-event when there's conditions, release conditions in place, that we do the necessary follow-up checks to ensure and do everything within our power to ensure the offenders are abiding by their conditions, which in turn prevents or reduces risk to the victims. So those type of matters, the judicial authorization pieces on short notice becoming skilled within that, are police functions.
Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Commissioner Akindoju.
This is my second question. I'll always use my second question to say a big thank you to the RCMP. Please pass our gratitude to all serving men and women of the COP for what they keep doing. Crime has continued to increase. We see different things happening in the world. The level of uncertainty continues to increase, but we see your presence. I come from the retail world. I come from the private sector. All my colleagues in the world that own businesses are crying out now. The stores are being broken into. Spring Garden, Sackville, Dartmouth. That's a lot of money invested by people. All they want is see more police vehicles, whereas politicians don't want to see more. They don't want to spend more money. All those things cost more money. I think the issue that we need to start thinking about is public perception about police. It's not that you're not doing the work. And that's why I said in my first instance that nobody knows more than what you need than yourselves and all the officers here supporting you. So I give you an accolade for that. You know the number of vehicles, armored vehicles, people. The more stations you have closer to homes, the more we can sleep, because it's a deterrent. Just your uniform. And that's why you go to stores today, people look like policemen. They're not, because that we see is sort of deterring people. So for me, and I hope my colleagues, huge thank you. Huge thank you. The policing model is going to change. We're working on that. And once that comes up, we'll know where to ask questions in terms of the dollar value. I don't think that 1.9 is a lot. But my fear is, what am I judging it against? I have to go back to last year. I have to go back to that. So it's just those detailed dollar values. It's more detailed with HRM. It's not because it's more detailed. And we'll talk to it about that when we get there. But I want to make an appeal to my colleagues here who will be going to the House to please look at just the dollar value, just the dollar and cents. Let's look at what these men and women bring to the table. How are we safer? Vince said he's looking at what value this money represents. I can tell you, crime has just increased more than, and we are still safe. At least one of the safest countries in the world. So thank you. But please, let us be able to defend you further by giving us just those data that relates to, the budget, so we can say, yes, we've done our work. So I close my chapter here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I had that we had Vice Chair Kent speaking next, and then Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you came to that space, Yemi. Commissioner Akindoju. Sometimes you confuse me with your talk, but that's me. I'm not a police specialist. You folks are. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial specialist. So I rely on my understanding of what's presented. I rely on what's presented in the way of gives me the confidence to know that what's being presented is a true need, a need that's been explained, a need that fits within my perspective on the growth that is happening right now in our municipality, that will grow exponentially over the next number of years. Probably within 5 years, we're going to see a whole different landscape. And I believe strongly right now, this is the time to start to grow the strength. We have debated in this room, not debated in this room, but we have lamented in this room about the strength of our force, the importance of our force, our police service being healthy, supported in their personnel, being creating scenarios that the public are welcome to, as opposed to wondering why are they not seeing bodies in their police officers in their communities. And that's what I rely on, because and I do have to consider the cost. I do have to look at it and say, is that consistent with what we have had in the past and we've approved? Is that consistent when you put all the pieces together for me? And I think you did present that today, the $216,080 per officer. And we even had it broken down where 113 is salary, which means the other part of that is their uniforms, their cars, their equipment, their training, their access to specialized services. All of those layers of things and many, many more are captured in that per officer cost. So does that make sense to me today? Yes, it does. We do have a responsibility to put, well, we don't. We could just pass this off and say, we're an advisory group, you've asked for it, we're just going to rubber stamp it. But that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. We are asking questions. We are getting, each one of us have to have a different level of confidence in why we would vote in one way or the other. So today and any other days that we have that, I encourage you to look at it that way. If we start getting too far down in the weeds, I see poor Jerry there in the back of the room sometimes just shaking his head thinking, how many different ways are we going to say it sometimes, even in council when we have it? It's how many different ways are we going to be asked the same question? I rely on, in any role that I have in like this, any committee, is am I voting in favor of something or against something because I feel well informed and I have a commitment to that space that's telling me this is the right thing to do. So for me, I will be supporting it. I do appreciate, and it's no surprise to anyone, I appreciate our policing services. I believe strongly that we're partners in that. We're only at the beginning, I think, of changing a trajectory of supporting the police financially to create good service. it had dipped down below down to reducing those services. I think we have to now trajectory up and supporting the requests that we need because of all the reasons I said, but also the added space of working with our public safety partners in our communities. I could go on and on. Should I come back or can I just finish? I want to take a minute on intimate partner violence positions. We talked a lot about it. The work that I have done in the past, I am a woman who's had some experiences. I also believe strongly in equipping our police service with the specialists that are needed. I want to go back to the space around the high-risk cases. The high-risk cases, to be very clear, are high risk of lethality. There's a high risk of something going very wrong, something we cannot turn around, which is a death. So the risk associated to those files in this year have grown by almost 40 cases. That's a lot. Those are the high risk cases. The others have grown as well, just the calls for service. We cannot undervalue the request that's coming today on those cases. We've been fighting, certainly I have been in the trenches for a long time around escalating the profile of intimate partner violence in communities, the reality of it, the conversations around it. I think more than ever, we are doing that now. We are talking about it. It has been identified as an epidemic in our province, and we have a responsibility to be part of that. So I would encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Commissioner Mazzini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I enjoyed the conversation or the comments around value for money. And I think, Mr. Chair, future meetings, we need to explore that further. I look at how do we measure success in our police forces, right? At a high level, are our communities safer today than they were yesterday? But how do we measure that? So I think it's a conversation, Mr. Chair, for future meetings, and somehow we can have those conversations, debates, and those. And there are some metrics in place now, but I think it's important that we have those conversations so we could articulate it with the residents of HRM. So thanks for those bringing those that brought that up. So I have questions about the CART. Chief Superintendent. So you went through, you're adding the one full-time position and the reasons why, and the flag went off for me when you talked about more focus on homelessness. And so I'm looking at Rachel on this to jump into also. Do you have the numbers in the areas that RCMP are covering, the number of folks that are living rough? Do you have encampments in those areas, or do you have provincially run shelters in those areas? And by adding another full-time position to CART, what's the work that position and CART will be doing specifically related to homelessness?
Through the chair to the commissioner. Thank you. Homelessness is but one portion. We work very closely, or our CART team has incredibly good relationships with variety of groups dealing with homelessness. Our CART team's developing relationships with in the tiny homes community with residents there, and they're participating in any criminality associated to those areas. So that's one piece, along with youth, seniors. We have to evolve our senior education piece as well, and our senior engagement level. I don't have those numbers particularly with me, but they work exceptionally close together with all agencies, because as we know, it's a multi-agency response to the homelessness to try to resolve things positively.
Thank you. Rachel, to put you on the spot, do you have any high-level numbers on in the areas of the RCMP are covering. The Chief Superintendent alluded to was once a encampment in Sackville, and thank goodness that encampment is gone because it was very problematic for those living there and those around there. Now we have a tiny home village there. Do you have any sense of numbers within those areas of homelessness, where they are? Are there encampments? Are their numbers increasing? Are they maintaining themselves? Your button on there. Yeah.
The numbers of people sleeping rough overall is around 200 right now. About 65 to 70% of those are living in designated encampments. So those would be in the city core. There are three encampments currently: Lower Flynn, near the northwest arm, and one in central Dartmouth, and one near Barrington Street in downtown Halifax. The remaining number of people sleeping rough are scattered throughout the HRM, including in rural areas. So some of them are out in Sackville, and in fact, probably people sleeping rough in those areas per capita may be slightly higher than the core because there are no designated encampments in those areas. So if you want to be in your own community living rough in Sackville, there is no choice of going to a designated encampment. So it is certainly an issue. And there are quite a number of service providers that would be located in HRD areas. And we constantly work closely with the HRD as well as the HRP on like monitoring of new tents that are cropping up in those areas, trying to connect people, the fire risk this summer. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes we do forget, or at least I forget, that it's, our homeless crisis is not just in the core, it's in these other areas. And speaking to some of my council colleagues from Sackville, when we had the encampment in Sackville, that was a bad situation for a whole bunch of reasons in there. So, and I hear the tiny homes have been a success to date. So thank you, Chief Superintendent. Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Commissioner Bezik-Escalard?
Thanks. Thanks for your patience. All the questions here, Chief Superintendent. Quick questions. The 12 approved positions from last year, have those already been filled?
For the 2 community offices? So there's
Yeah.
6, and 2?
Yeah.
Not completely filled.
Okay.
There is 8 in the staffing process right now in varying degrees. And I have it somewhere. However, over the course of the questions, my papers got a little bit mixed up. But
No.
a number have been identified, and now we're working on continuing to build up to the 12. So we actually, although the funding didn't officially start until October 1st, we started the staffing process prior to that. My specialist behind me here, we've had 9 identified. So 1 corporal and 8 constables, and staffing actions are in process for the other remaining.
Thanks for that. It helps to frame what the next things that I'm going to be interested in with regards to metrics and the incremental benefit from having the officers that were hired from last year and then the ones we hired from this year. So thanks for that. Second quick question is, we touched a bit under IPV about the potential for an integrated unit with HRP. Question is, if there were changes to the organization, would that lead to loss of the additional staff, or could they be reallocated? So when we commit to having these extra positions, are they positions that will just exist in perpetuity within HRD, or are they up for potential change or loss in future?
To the commissioner through the chair, I apologize, I forget to do that. I'm so interested in the questions. The answer is, given the current trajectory and priority of IPV, however in future the organization looks, those positions will remain dedicated to IPV and the organization structure supporting that. There's enough out there that, unfortunately, it would be very nice to be in a position where we could reduce numbers. However, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I hope that answers your question.
That's great, thanks. Last quick thing was, one thing that came up during the public consultations was traffic enforcement. Can you just remind me, is there a specific dedicated traffic enforcement unit within HRD and its staffing?
Yes, there is a dedicated traffic unit. I believe it is a total of 6. We are going to be looking down the road to elevate those numbers due to what we're seeing in the news. And I believe at present there is 4 operational. I wouldn't put my hand on a Bible and say that, but my recollection says that's the current level due to a variety of reasons.
Sir, was there a question? Sorry. Oh, that was it. Okay. Thank you kindly. Sorry, I was just working with our solicitor there just for a second. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay. Commissioner Hinch?
For the satellite office, do you guys have a building picked out or anything at this point in time?
For the
Eastern Passage satellite office.
Not yet. We're beginning the process of examining options there. We don't have the position. Once the positions are approved, we'll get into it in earnest. But at present, we're doing preliminary examination with assistance of people we know within the community to potentially determine a location.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I have one question, I think, for our Department of Justice partner, Executive Director Haley Crichton. Would you mind? So we're making a lot of assumptions about the per officer cost and that there's a new billing method coming. We're making the assumption that we're going to be in the same order of magnitude. And I guess what I'd like a little bit of clarity on is that today, all the specialized services are being paid for by the province. Could that be changing? Could we see that officer costs go up significantly or any percentage? Can you give us a little more insight as to what you're thinking in that area?
Yes, I can. It will be a little bit indirectly. So the purpose of changing the billing mechanism, and also when you read all 6 of the foundational changes together, is really about sustainability of policing for communities across Nova Scotia, including municipalities and the budget process that supports police in communities. So the intent of the province is actually to bear more of the burden of the cost of policing in municipalities. And so I will leave it at that a little bit indirectly.
Thank you. That provides somewhat good clarity. Bearing no other questions from any of the commissioners, I have one question, though, I'd like to ask before we move on, and it relates to CART. And so recently in the news, I heard of a big drugs incident that occurred, something that occurred in the Sackville area, warrants an arrest done in the Bedford area. There's a lot of news coverage over it. And I'm wondering about, the function of CART. And so I had understood that all the drug activities were typically covered under CID. So I was surprised when I heard that incident and operation, which moved into the Halifax jurisdiction as well, had occurred. And I wanted to understand better, was that solely CART that was doing that? And was CID involved in that? And why wasn't if they were not?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I'm not even recalling the specific incident. However, there's also involved in a number of these items our street crime enforcement unit. So there's often synergies between the two with the CART unit and the street crime unit and with CID. Depending on the magnitude, there could be a variety of resources involved. And of course, resources are limited. And then, of course, if it's beyond their capabilities at a level where CID will be engaged. So I'm not sure if CID was engaged in that specific case. Potentially, it could be every level, depending on the magnitude of response. And of course, it'll be a shared response depending on location and who's involved.
Thank you. There appeared to be a lot of fanfare in the media about an advertising of or naming of CART in the press that went along with it, and how the operation was a success, which was great. But it just made me confused as to the role of CART as it relates to drug enforcement and the role of CID and its specialized unit for drug enforcement, and whether we have two separate units that aren't working together. That was really the heart of my question. I don't know whether the chief had any comments. No? Okay.
I just received an update. It was entirely CART, and it was due to their involvement and relationships within the, I believe, the tiny homes in Sackville. And because of the relationships they built, and they're still police officers. So as they encounter items, they're going to take the appropriate action based on what they observe.
Okay. I guess just a general comment I have, and this example I think illustrates it. That the need for re-examining CID, broadening an understanding of it, trying to build better integration. I mean, if they did this on their own and the drug unit within CID wasn't involved in that, that just seems inefficient from my limited knowledge, and that there should be more operational planning cohesion when it comes to that particular service. So I look forward to seeing the CID review, and it does make me think that some of these resource asks are premature until the review is done when it comes to some of the asks, not the community ask, but the IPV and the CART in terms of when this greater review is done, because we still keep advancing, I think, independent services, and we really want, I think, more integration of services, and I don't feel that we're getting there fast enough. Thank you. Are we ready for the question? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? All those against? Motion passed. Thank you. I think we'll take a perfect timing, 3:00. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and go on to HRP. Everybody to take their seat. All right, are we good, Madam Clerk, with our technology? Excellent. So we're going to reconvene and we're going to move on to item number 10.1.2, which is the Halifax Regional Police 26-27 operating budget. Our presenter today will be Chief McLean. And then again, after that, we'll ask one of the commissioners to put the motion on the floor and we will have a discussion. Over to you, Chief.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's interesting going second. I think I actually kind of like it. So in terms of, no thanks to John for his presentation. John mentioned about his new boots. So as soon as he said that, I figured, well, actually, I have a pair of boots on that I actually just glued the soles back on them because I liked them so much. So I'm not sure what that tells you about the budgeting process, but take from it what you will. So, no, exactly. You like what you like. So first, I just want to introduce the folks we have here now. Certainly you have some folks that you see on a regular basis, but also we have many folks here from HRM Finance, and as well, we actually have a couple folks, good folks from the IES supervisory function, because a lot of what I talk about today will speak directly to the world that they actually live in. So I'll start off with some sort of tombstone statistical information data that you've probably seen several times before, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. What's that? Next, and then we'll, and I was actually told yesterday about people, like, don't say their names in there because people want to maintain their anonymity, so I'm actually good with that. So, it's a true story. And then we'll get into sort of a snapshot of our current environment and the year moving ahead, and which will move into some of the specific financial information. And then that'll segue, I think, nicely into our specific ask around our service enhancements, which are very specific to IES this year. Again, so as you know, our mission is working together to make our community safe. We have the policing model jurisdiction that you're well aware of, 3 HRP patrol divisions in Central, East, and West divisions, which make up the majority of the urban core of HRM. We do have our unique integrated policing environment with ourselves in the RCMP, our partners in policing, and a number of integrated units that exist, specifically the CID division. Our current authorized employee strength, sworn officers, is 564 and 217 civilian employee positions. And quickly, just the year in review. As you're aware, some of you were there. We graduated 22 cadets in June of 2025. We have another class that started October 20th with 40 cadets that are sitting in that. My thanks to some of the folks that are here today for their work in making that possible. I've hired 6 experienced police officers, which are officers from outside jurisdictions over the span of the last 9 months. The reality is that at one time, well, that was a funnel of resources at one time. It's become much more of a trickle now, and that's the Canadian reality. We're working on our early intervention model program, which is a wellness piece about ensuring wellness supports in place and recognize them before they become problems. As you're well aware from last year's deliberations, funding was already allocated around body-worn cameras in the DEMS digital evidence management system. That's currently in flight. Very proud of the Rainbow Internal Support Network, the folks that have come together within our organization to advise HRP and the public in terms of issues around the 2S LGBTQ plus 1A community. We ran a alternative response project back early in the year, which we're still running at a reduced rate, but it was about what kind of things can we divert away from frontline response, but still at the same time provide that level of service. And that's something we will continue to look at moving forward in terms of what that looks like. I think it was a good program. the Employee Engagement Working Group. We know there are surveys that go, we've done an HRP survey, so we've done things. They're a very active and robust group in terms of that's looking at ways we can bring our workforce together in terms of doing certain things that that actually flows into the Respectful, Safe and Workplace Working Group, which I can tell you we had our first symposium on Monday. Myself and Commissioner Moore were there, and we're on the leadership panel at the end. I think for all accounts and purposes, it was very well done and a very productive day of bringing our folks together in terms of how do we make our workplace a better place for those who work there. We're also work is underway, and I think soon to be finalized around our on-demand interpretation services around that will allow officers who are in the field to have real-time interpretive processes with folks they come into contact with. Because as we know, Halifax is a growing city. I'm guessing there's going to be a slide about the growth of our city. Someone here in this room, and everyone who's a councillor here will probably see the same one several times over the next few months as you move into your budget processes. But you know, we're a growing city. Our diversity is growing, and the reality that not everyone speaks the language that we do. And we need to be able to do that. So that speaks to some of the things we're looking forward to the year in review. The year ahead, I've already spoken to. Our continual police science program. When I took on this job a few years ago, one of the things that I was committed to was the issues around staffing, which was one of the main morale issues around staffing and retention, one of the main morale issues around the department. So I've committed to that. Our classes, like I say, 40 is the largest we've ever had an internal class that we're having now. So it'll be interesting to see how that unrolls itself. The Deputy of Administration is sitting behind me. He knows I'll be tapping on him again next month to start rolling our next recruitment process in terms of what that looks like, because that's what's going to get us ahead moving forward. Continuing with our experienced police officer recruitment, the intervention program I spoke of. Wortley is always important to us, and certainly race-based data is one of the things we have in flight. Employee engagement, the release of our HRP policies, the interpreters, and the DEM system, all which are, you know, look at the layer, and that's a lot. There's a lot of complex work in that. That's going to be done. I say I keep adding this because I don't think I can understate how important it is. You know, recruitment continues to be a challenge in Canadian policing. Both cadets and both experienced police officers, we continue to evolve and adapt to meet our needs. And like I said, for anyone watching this who has an interest in policing, our applications will open up again very shortly in the next month or so around people that want to get involved back in policing again. That's something that's very important to me. So this is a good snapshot, actually, because one of the questions that's come up, and I know Commissioner Mancini's asked about it, and you know, so why aren't you asking for bodies? And you know, I've answered it several times. I think in terms of, you know, we have some built-in vacancy space that allows us to hire those 40 when they come. You know, we live in a time of transition. I think that's different than when I joined the department, you know, 30 years ago, in terms of people stay for shorter periods of times or people move, and there's all kinds of, you know, other things that impact on the decision around people maintaining long police careers. But at the end of the day, what we want in this slide is we always want the green to be higher than the blue. And the blue is retirements, resignations, and the green are people that we bring on. As you can see, we're still, you know, coming back from that period in 2023 that saw a significant exodus of officers in terms of, and it takes a while to catch up, which is why we're making some of the decisions that we are around resourcing. I would, you know, I anticipate all goes well, you know, 2026, the next year should show a really high number on the green chart. Again, the requisite growing population chart that has to be in here. We are the largest municipality in the Atlantic regions. We're growing at an extraordinary rate. We have the responsibility policing the core services, and the core services is not just where people sleep, it's where people congregate, where they come, where they go to games, where they do things, the government, schools, universities, you know, not unlike any other major, you know, capital city in terms of the Canadian population, computer adjusted populations. We have seen a decrease in the growth in the last year, But that's just because the growth before that was extraordinary. So we're still seeing growth at a high level, fueled largely in part with international migration as a primary contributing factor. And that's just something, again, this is the slide, anyone who's counsel, you will see the exact same slide, I'm sure, in just about every business plan that comes forward in terms of where we're at. 503,000 people in HRM, which was, significant change over, going back, 20 years ago in terms of what that number was. Now, and this starts to touch on some of the reasons why we're actually here today having this conversation about service enhancements. Our IES, the Integrated Emergency Services, is a PSAP, which is the Public Safety Answering Point. It's in HRM. It is the largest PSAP in Nova Scotia. We receive and process all 911 and non-emergency calls for service from the public, which requires one of the more following emergency services: HRP, RCMP, HRD, Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency, and EHS services. The one distinction here is that IES also dispatches resources for the RCMP, HRP, and Halifax Regional Fire. However, EHS is dispatched on a separate provincial model in terms of how their in-person response is taken care of. This speaks to the total number of calls made to IES on a yearly basis. That last one, 2025 year to date, that goes up to so almost exactly 200,000 for 2 quarters. So we look at roughly 300,000 calls a year is received by IES. And when we take into consideration, not everyone in IES is call takers. There's dispatchers, there's call takers. In terms of when you look at the number of call takers and the 300,000 calls spread over the number of call takers is a lot of calls in terms of people that are managing that service. And, and they do an obviously very good job of it. This slide looks at what is the percentage of 911 versus 50/20 or non-emergency calls. And what we've seen is since 2017, if you average out those numbers, 31% of calls for that period of time are 911 calls. So which would make the remaining number in terms of 69% of being non-emergency calls received by IES. This is the number of calls HRP officers are dispatched to from 2017 to 25, again, year to date. And on average, we saw there was a high number back in 2017. We saw lower numbers during the COVID years. We're starting to see now we're starting to move up again over the 100,000, but roughly 100,000 police dispatch calls over that period of time. I don't see that number reducing itself, but also, as you see on the next slide, we've also got into online reporting, which contributes to that somewhat. We're making some changes in our online reporting capabilities, so I hope in the future that actually number will increase. Will allow more opportunities for some online reports, and as well as we talked about the ARU alternative response program that has some impact on that. At the end of the day, no matter how you jumble up the mix of calls, there's a lot of calls that come in HRP one way or the other through on an annual basis. So now we'll move into the financial summary. This is the operating budget for the current year, total of 101 million. 13.5 million of that is revenue and recoveries. 104 million, which is the big chunk of our budget, is around compensation costs, which is related directly to salaries. And then our non-compensation operating costs is just under 10 million, equipment, services, supplies, and such. And again, a lot of these numbers, as you'll see in your booklet, are broken down more succinctly as we move forward. For the proposed budget moving forward, the one that we're talking about now, our proposed 26-27 budget is just, 103,494,000, which is an increase of 2.2 million or a 2.21% from the last budget. You can see the numbers, how they're broken down. The proposed service enhancements are 8 full-time IES employees, which for this for the year coming up would be just under $400,000 because we budget them not on a full year. We budget them halfway through the year, basically prorating that salary. If we took those out and just went on natural incurrences in budget inflation, those type of things, service costs, and those, our operating budget would increase by $1.8 million, which is a 1.82% increase. And like I said, the booklet, which I believe everyone should have, I think you received it, so it breaks those down more on a line by line. But one of the things that we committed to when I took over this job a few years ago was providing that level of detail in our budget submissions on a go-forward basis. So our proposed service enhancements are 8 emergency response communicators, full-time civilians. The estimated cost, like I said, for the next year would be just under 400,000. Going forward, be up to 776,000. That's the full year costs. When we talk about emergency response communicator call taking, dispatch responsibilities, and like I said, we have some folks that actually do it here that can speak better to it if we get to that point at some point as we're moving forward. You know, answer 911 calls within 20 seconds and non-emergency calls as soon as possible. Often receive chaotic information and trying to translate it into clear and actionable direction. Determine the priority level of call and route accordingly. Dispatch resources, both police and fire, where in-person response is required. Manage and perform checks on multiple complex IT systems, assessing risk, communicating relevant information, relaying information between caller and responding units, connecting with internal agencies, and sometimes staying on the call for long periods of time with callers who are in a moment of distress. I say this personally in terms of when I came on the job, and I don't want to talk about, the snow was this much high and all this other, but when I joined Halifax Police back in the early 90s, in terms of one of their functions, our IES at the time was in our building. It was actually in our headquarters, and sometimes as a young constable, you would be sent there to do that job. It's not a place you wanted to go on a regular. It was a hectic, it was a stressful environment to go in to do that job in terms of, I've always had respect for the men and women who actually do that job and do it extremely well. So ERC training, an entry-level emergency response communicator, and I'll just call them ERCs because it's easy to say, undergoes three months of initial training. Then once trained, takes generally 6 months for them to feel comfortable in the role, and up to a year to become considered proficient. As like I said, it's a stressful environment. I can tell you, like I said, as a new officer going in and thinking you know what you're knowing, answer a few IES calls of distraught people on the other end, you come to the realization, no, you don't. And to become a dispatcher, additional training is required on top, which includes testing against provincial standards. This can take up to 2 years. And through all that, ERC retention is critically important as the process to replace an ERC who's retired or resigned can be lengthy. So this is our current proposed structure, an IES manager. And what I can say about that is we just made a shift in the last period of time of a conversion of that position to a civilian position. It had previously been a civilian position. It changed over to a sworn position a few years ago. And we were able to convert that to another sworn position, a straight up conversion in terms of putting an IES manager in that place. Training supervisor, the min assistant, then they work the 4-watch model just like our patrol resources do, just like the RCMP's patrol resources do. 17 ERCs are full-time across the watches, and then part-timers that assist during peak hours. And the proposed in-service enhancements would add 2 ERCs to both particular watch, recognizing that that's, the question could be, say, why not less? Like 4 would add 1 to the watch. I don't know if we get the impact that we're actually looking for. Adding more would more be better. I think more is always better in most particular things for the most case, but at the same time, we're trying to be, mindful of, the financial and fiscal realities of where we're at. And I think, as we move forward and as, things around next gen 911 come into place, that those are considerations we can make as the future comes and we're aware what those impacts may or may not be. So to be properly resourced during the shift, there's a minimum staffing level of 1 supervisor and 14 ERCs. When staffing absences are come, whether it's sick, whether it's whatever it is, part-time staff's not available, they use a scheduled overtime piece in there. It's one of the only I think the only place actually within our service where we actually mandatory provide overtime shifts to people. It has worked. I mean, it was worked because people do it. The reality is it's not a, just for the wellness of folks, it's not an ideal model. The reality is people should be able to enjoy their time off as best that they can. That's why they have time off. As they say, the collective agreement, overtime is mandatory, not voluntary. They can work extra shifts. Obviously, you try to get people who want to do it and all this stuff, but at some particular times, there are people being called in for mandatory work. We are in the emergency services business, so there's a recognition that sometimes that's necessary. And I don't mean sometimes, I mean a lot. So this is the number of mandatory overtime shifts since 22. As you can see, the number has fluctuated, but it's a high number. Year to date back to September is 328. So we'll be roughly on par for what we were last year, I'd say by the end of the year. This graph speaks to the overtime in total hours over the last number of years. So we can see that it's, since there's been a, looks like a bit like a mountain range. The blip there is the COVID years when really there was less going on in terms of just about everything. And in terms of, so we see that there's been a steady shift in overtime hours over that period of time. And with a steady shift in overtime hours, not surprisingly, there's a steady increase in total cost of overtime over that period of time. And, that's obviously one of the things we hope to address by increasing the capacity for IES. Again, some of the staffing challenges, it's become more challenging with the full-time folks, the rules of the collective agreement. We're in bargaining now, but that which allows vacation leave for those that are in IES vacation. So when understaffing does occur, we sometimes find the necessity to take some of the supervisors away from their supervisory duties to do frontline work, which is not ideal. And we have supervisors there to supervise. So, but that's again not ideal. But answering 911 calls will and shall always be the priority. And so it's important to note that despite any of the staffing challenges, we still continue to answer 911 calls within the 20 seconds or less, 99.9% of the time. It is, however, some of the lower priority tasks and responsibilities which feel the impact of challenging staffing levels. So sometimes non-emergency calls take a little longer to answer, meaning increased wait time. Officers who require system checks for calls that will normally be done by an ERC are sometimes doing them themselves, which is fine in some cases. In other cases, it may have an officer safety impact around their surrounding environment. And like I already said, to IES supervisors being required to staff, non-supervisory positions and cover breaks and those type of things, which takes away from their supervisory duties. Because as we know, the supervising of folks is in fact important. What we have seen, however, over that period of time is that there has been an increase in the answer time for non-emergency calls, which has gone up from 2017 to 2025, from 21 seconds to 63 seconds, which again may not seem like a lot, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but it's an increase in terms of the amount of time. That was a question I remember that was asked at one point when we had a future past conversation. Just some of the, staffing levels are low. Members know they can be asked at any point to stay on to work additional hours or work on the upcoming days off. They accept the 24/7 nature of their work. Like I said, emergency services, they are frontline responders. Make no doubt about it. They're frontline responders. They are, in fact, in most often cases, not all, but most often, they are in fact the first people in when the community or society or someone is in some level of chaos. These are in fact the first people they come in contact with. And we show those graphs around overtime hours and financial and overtime. I get it. All the financial people, there's a financial impact on that. I get it. But there's a human impact on that I think is even more important. There is a wellness. We can't just talk about wellness. I think we actually have to walk the walk about wellness in terms of, and make some decisions that are actually in the best interest of the folks that are doing, what is a stressful job. I understand some of you may have been there recently in terms of getting a sense of what the IES actually looks like in terms, it's an amazing place where a lot of work gets done. Which leads into my next place about wellness. We've seen this, a gradual increase in the number of sick hours in terms of IES. And I think that's a trend that we want to, sort of see on the decrease going forward. And it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's going to take a lot of things, some of the things we talked about last year in terms of culture, all this type of things, wellness, those will take, but staffing is one part of that discussion in terms of trying to get that on the decline. This graph, I know Chair O'Malley, if you don't like colors, then you probably don't like this one. So, but just speaks to what's that? Oh, are you? Oh, okay. Yeah, and so you can put whatever you want in there then in terms of But this looks at the people that are off on different reasons, pre-retirement leave, maternity, WCB leave, sick leave, LTD, modified duties, all of these things, and there are multiple, there's no one answer for why that is. Like there are multiple, things that impact some of those things, but it just gives you a visual graph in terms of some of the folks that are on it. Like I say, it's a stressful environment. So this speaks to the growth of IES as compared to the other public safety agencies. And the thing I really want to stress is, while I sit here asking for these bodies because they exist in my budget, the reality is they're not just, and I own them in the sense of, from a budget perspective. The reality is they provide services for fire, they provide services for RCMP, they provide the initial service of folks that are calling in because they broke their leg or they got in an accident or something like that. So this is really a public safety ask on a much broader level than just policing. So we can see that, there has been an increase in IES staffing back since 17 at 14%, which is 9.5 positions. But we see, there's been greater increases in just about everyone else, except for me, by the way. I'll just say that I'm lower in that particular place. But, those are questions in the future that we will need to address at some particular time as we look at growth. Certainly we know firefighter positions have increased by 27%, volunteer positions, 19%. Lots of new fire trucks coming on, lots, all those other growth. He talks about growth in, Morris Lake and those other areas. And like I said, me and Commissioner Mancini met with, with the, who do we meet with a couple of years of the developer that Clayton that looked at the amount of growth that's going to occur in other regions with OH. It's going to be significant in terms of, and they will need not just police, they'll need fire, they'll need all those other things in terms, and we need someone on the other end to make sure that people are getting there on time, well informed, and all those other things. We talked recently about the alert system. We now, all the alerts that come through our agencies goes through the IES supervisors in terms of, so they have to complete it, mandatory testing and training. I see that, being something that, we can provide on an HRM basis, and, as we move forward. We talk about new things coming, next gen 911, radio upgrades, the CARE program in terms, so we're in conversations now with Rachel and her team about what does that look like. And, when on those occasions, when that initial call comes into IES or 9 or whatever it is in terms of how do we get that turnover, what level of information needs to be shared and all those other things. Like, there's an increasing impact and an increasing level of responsibility on IES operators, and particularly on the supervisor level. And I'd rather have them doing their supervisory job than actually covering someone else who isn't in on that particular day in terms of, because of a staffing responsibility. Again, some of this stuff is self-explanatory in terms of longer wait times for emergency calls. As we said, we've seen it's gone up, 300%, 21 to 61 over the last number of years. There is a level of public dissatisfaction when they call and no one answers right away. We know that. The issues around wellness, around mandatory overtime, the negative impacts on their health and well-being. And again, you know, something that we can't, and we lose sight of this sometimes, and I know I certainly lose sight of it. When we make people work so much, they lose those opportunities for their own professional, because they can't get to their professional development opportunities and that sort of thing that has impact on their morale and employee engagement. All these things are intertwined together. Again, reduction of overtime costs, I think, which is important. I get it. I don't think it's the most important thing. Training, and then just working with our partner agencies and ensuring that things are done in the best possible operational way that they can take place. So again, like I said, I have some IES operators actually here that may be able to answer some questions that I can if it becomes necessary. But really, like I said, this, you know, this is this for the last couple of years I've come here, I've not asked for sworn police officer bodies. Don't get used to it, because at some point the reality is, I think particularly after we have a CID review and look at some of those things that, you know, going forward, because I will be spending a great deal of my, well, not necessarily my time, but my deputies' time, the other people's times in terms of filling all those vacancies through our, you know, a commitment to our growing, increasing class sizes. But, you know, really this is about, when we talk about truly about an ask for public safety, this is probably the closest we can get to that, from the sense of that which I control, in terms of, because of the impact it has on several of the partners that are directly involved with delivering that service. So again, thank you. That wasn't too bad. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you, Chief. So can I ask one of the commissioners to put the motion on the floor? Commissioner Bezek-Escalante, would you like to read the motion? Madam Clerk, would you mind putting up the motion?
Thank you. So I move that, having ensured the proposed Halifax Regional Police operating budget for 2026-27 as presented at the 24th September and 29th October 2025 meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners is consistent with those matters referred to in subsection 55(3) of the Police Act, the Board of Police Commissioners moves the following recommendation: that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed 2026-27 Halifax Regional Police operating budget of $103,494,000, which includes a proposed increase in the composition as set out in the proposed service enhancements identified in the Halifax Regional Police proposed operating budget 2026-27 information package, attachment 1 of the staff report dated 16th October 2025, and as presented by Chief McLean to the board on 29th October 2025.
Thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chair Kent. So we'll move on to the, would you like to speak to it first, sir?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chief. Same comments as before, as always. Thanks to you and your team for all of the dedication, hard work. We know that at our level, you know, you are the experts in policing services, and we rely on you and your teams to let us know what is needed. From the IES specific question, it does sound like we've managed to keep up with the demand. I note as I think Chair, you had alluded to in one of the earlier meetings, there is a National Emergency Number Association standard to answer 90% of emergency calls within 15 seconds and 95% within 20 seconds. Not all places are able to keep up with that. Toronto, for example, was 37 seconds overall. So I think that speaks to how much work our IES team is doing. So kudos to them. Question number 1, the increase in staffing presumes that what is gapped currently has been made up of overtime. So is the increase, if we do not approve this, you mentioned that there was a 1% increase rather than a 2% increase or so on. Would it be reasonable to say that the increase will actually still be 2% regardless of our approving this because of the extra overtime spent for the IES? Or did I misinterpret the numbers there? So because we are spending so much on overtime for IES, that even though our positions are less than what you're asking for, we're actually going to spend the same amount anyway on increased compensation because of overtime.
So part of that question is a financial question, I guess, in terms of where the overtime comes from, in terms of we're not going over our overall budget in terms of, expire. So I can see, I'm doing the math through my head here now. So I can understand what you're saying. We do want a reduction in overtime. We do, right? Again, but I want to be clear that, that's not the primary reason I think that, why we're saying it. But I think that, a reduction in overtime is important because we do have, like I said, it's one of the few places we do have a minimum staffing requirement number, like 14, I believe it is. And so if you're not at that number, then getting to that number requires extra resources, whether it's financial or whatever. So yes, I would suggest that there is some validity to what you're saying in terms of you're paying Peter or you're paying Paul, but one day at the end, someone's getting paid in terms of, getting to the standard to make sure that we stay at the, the 99.9% standard and all those other things. So there is a cost to it.
Thanks. That helps. Thank you. I guess the rest of my few minutes here, because that is your ask was for the increase. As I mentioned in the RCMP earlier question to you when the chief superintendent was on, I'm also interested in looking at not just the increase, but the overall budget and how we assess value for money, and how do we basically prove to ourselves that we are indeed investing in the right places, and that the work that we're hoping to get done is getting done. I go back to some of the public feedback that we got over the last few weeks. Some of them were specific to specific scenarios like retail crime, traffic safety and enforcement, maintaining presence community centers, diverting or deferring calls to the new crisis assistance response team. So that helps us as a board to understand where the public feel the police should focus on. Some of the feedback was, I think, more appropriately addressed by the councillors sort of at the political level as elected representatives, as some of the feedback touched on kind of political or philosophical issues like the role of police in society. Some of the feedback would be probably more appropriately addressed when we have more data on some of the other public safety initiatives, like the potential that the crisis assistance response team will allow for reductions in calls to police service and allow those resources to be spent elsewhere. But like I said, my question is as some of the public feedback was, are the resources being used for things that only the police can do or that they do best? And how are we measuring how well that's done? So digging into the budget numbers, so thank you for sharing all the details on the actual expenditures versus the budget from this past year. So and I said I'm probably getting out of the time here, so I'll just stop at this one question. So about 104 million was spent on actual compensation last year, which is about the same as what it was budgeted for, even though we have a whole bunch of vacant positions. So I assume, kind of like what I said with IES, I assume that it's overtime that is causing us to get to that same compensation. Is that correct, Chief?
So in some cases, there's some overstaffs in certain areas that don't get reflected in vacancies in terms of certain, but I would suggest that, the good chunk of that are overtime expenses that are meant to basically replace those that are vacant, in terms of doing the frontline response. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess where I'm going with this is, would it be fair to say that even if we were thinking about lowering the overall budget, the fact would remain that we would still be having to pay a certain number of officers overtime to maintain service levels, and therefore the actual amount spent would be about the same?
Well, yeah, the only real way to reduce budget is to remove bodies.
Yeah.
I think that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll stop there and allow for the round.
I think the CFO wants to.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to weigh in because there's a bit of a theme that came forward through the RCMP budget presentation and as well here around value for money. So, I would say, that's more of a discussion for your regular commissioner meeting. So value for money is certainly around evaluating performance, right? So I think, Councillor Mancini brought up about, what is the value we're getting for the increases that we approved last year. So I think as commissioners, right, as part of your duty, like that's something you can incorporate. And I don't want the chiefs to throw something at me, but as part, in the times I'm here, they give operational updates. So, with the help of your policy advisor, you can develop KPIs and performance metrics specifically related to the budget increases that goes to, specialized programming. So for example, the 911 agents or intimate partner violence, that sort of thing. So I appreciate the feedback, and I would encourage you to develop some metrics and regular reporting to the chair on that, and you can get a good sense of how the budget allocations that you've approved are doing over the year as you go into the next budget cycle, as the councillor mentioned earlier, right? Like we just finish one budget and goes into the next. So that's just a little 2 cents from me on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's exactly what I'm thinking, is that it would be nice to have a kind of a dashboard of some kind of performance measures to go with the budget ask to kind of see how we're doing with that. I'll play the newbie card, and that I just didn't know that that could have been brought up earlier or separately. So I appreciate your patience. So thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe I could just add to that discussion. Our solicitor was making note here in my ear that in the Police Act under Section 55, 3I, is that what it was? Yeah, it says, one of our duties is to ensure that the department is managed by the chief officer according to best practice and operates effectively and efficiently. So that's totally supports and aligns with the discussion here about coming up with some KPIs. Totally agree. Probably different than, crime stats, something else that can, be more reflective of value for money. So, which is probably a tough thing to do. Commissioner,
I didn't mean to reduce that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And Jerry, first of all, thank you. You nailed it. It's part of our governance, so that we should be doing that. Speaking specifically to the budget now, I want to thank you, Chief, but because of the public, and because this is a public meeting, we need to drill down on certain facts. You have, for so many last 2 years or since you came, given us enough data to speak to the facts. So I'm going to drill down a little bit. I look at your actuals. Actually, if you look at actuals between your core projected for 25, 26, similar to your actual. So I'm not looking at budget. But if you look at budget between 24 to 25 versus 26 to 20, 25 to 26 projected, you actually saved money. Bottom line, you saved 7%. You see, the public needs to understand. They look at absolute, they look at 130. And then if I compare, again, budget to budget, 2005 to 2006 versus the current budget, your total increase is 1.55. Now, I'm repeating myself. I'm looking at actual expense, actual of 101.2. That's before you added your revenue. If we go back to the revenue, if I take off revenue, in 2004 it's 99.5 versus 2000 projected 25, 26, you actually had only 2% increase. So if we look at those figures, we should be saying thank you, because we're not looking at what value per line. The total budget, I'm saying, the actual taxpayers' money in the last few years has not gone past 0.2%. That's number one. Number two, for me particularly, to be able to talk about, you're asking for 8 more people in a department called Integrated Service emergency service. I changed the name yesterday because I had to go and see. I was supposed to be somewhere, in fact, in the hospital yesterday, but I switched that away so that I can make an informed decision today. So thank you for inviting us. 3 of us were able to visit, was not able to attend, were able to attend that environment. And I spoke to real people. But that, I changed the name to Strategic Network. You mentioned it. It's not about police alone, it's about fire. It's about that. And we were present. And you, God, please forgive me. When that accident that was being announced today occurred, I saw it on the screen. So there's trauma, there's all sorts of things on these people. So when we start to talk about high risk jobs like nurses, like police, like the ones you do not see in this department, there's a reason for one: long-term disability, sickness, mental issues. Their parents like us, paternal and maternal leaves. They give back to children. They take care of their babies, leading, quote from my analysis, to overtime. So you're talking about overtime. What leads to that overtime? I have gone to look at it. There are so many things based on that profession that I call high risk, which takes people away from that. So as part of our governance, we should look at that as a separate strategy. True, overtime is a major cause of the need, but the need is real. So therefore, I'll give an example. I spoke to a lady, maybe I missed her name, Janet or Jan, who almost made me cry. I asked her, because it was a dark environment. My office was better. So I asked, apart from technology and all this budget thing, what do you need that will make your job better? She looked at me and said, we are fatigued. That's what she said. We are fatigued. If you can help us. So I'm talking to the public. It is not only about the dollar. These people are fatigued doing our safety work. You could remember all the things we talk about: return on investment, value. There was fire this year, there was this, there was that, there was that. The people that respond, do you know that even listening to the calls, people cannot take the next call? I was also there while we were there. We were only 2 calls. Before we left, 14 calls. So those are the real things. They are asking for 8 people, not because they just want to add. I wanted to see the organization chart, which is presented, but because of number of people that are off duty. Now, note, in my office, if I call for the time, people want to take it. But with this situation, they said overtime is mandatory. Even when you don't want it, you have to go. That's it. It's military. You have to go. So they work 12-hour shifts and work overtime. So people always think it's all about the money. How about the people? I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what, that was a big swallow, big breath. Wow, I think Commissioner Akindoju hit the nail on the head with this one. I spoke a little bit to that in the earlier request around the importance of providing the supports and services and to have a healthy and well service provider, which is our personnel in the departments, police service. I too have visited the center and heard some of the same things. I see there are members of that team in the room, and I know that Commissioner, at least I suspect that Commissioners Akindoju's remarks hit a space in her heart and in her mind, and as it did most of us. And there were a couple of things that stood out in those remarks that I'm just going to reemphasize. I think that's as much as I can do today. The need is real. Those 3 words, need is real, resonated on this one as well for exactly the same reasons. I know that some of the points that were put forward to me, and when I visited, would have been last year, is that some of our operators went through the entire experience of the mass casualty along with our RCMP members, who we know have a lot of healing to do. In some cases, it's been a journey that is still ongoing, and yet they're still in there doing those jobs and expected to go home to their own families whole and healthy, and we're not. I think it's important to say, under no uncertain terms, we are not saying they're not capable of doing that job, but they're not as healthy as they could be in some cases. They're still doing the job within the mandated percentage. So we know they're incredibly strong people. Oh, I know this is hard. This is traumatizing, and I apologize for that. The need's real. And this message is to all my colleagues as well. I truly believe as well that Commissioner Akindoju hit the nail on the head with the name of this team. I don't know if Strategic Network Services is exactly it. I think that those folks in that department could be engaged in maybe determining some kind of change, but I think that there's an opportunity here in the name to honor the true reality of the importance of it. So I'm going to leave it there because it's quite emotional, and I'd ask you all to support it because I will, this request.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you very much for the presentation. I have a few questions. In your presentation, you talked about recruiting for experienced police officers. Do you actually have a goal or a number goal? And is there a strategy to go after those experienced police officers? I look at our municipality, and regardless what we were talking yesterday in council about hiring a new CAO and hiring a new fire chief, and when those calls go out, we're inundated because people want to come to our municipality. So is there a goal and a strategy for those officers?
So to the council, we don't have a goal per se.
Mhm.
Like I said earlier, like back in my build time, in terms of when we were walking, the pipeline for experienced police officers was robust. There were lots around. Lots of things have happened on the policing landscape within Canada. So I am not the only person that's probably sitting in front of the board having this game conversation. This is a Canadian policing reality now. There isn't that number. The flip side to it is, so what we have done is we've gone to HR. HRM has been a partner with us with actually putting together a very well coordinated strategy and a campaign around having people come back home and that sort of stuff. And it's been successful to some degree. But the point of it is, so is everyone else that's looking to bring their officers back from where they're from in terms. So, well, we're looking at bringing officers here. There are other police agencies that are looking to bring officers back to them. We had an officer who left us last week who was relatively new because he lived in Truro. And that's where he was able to live. And it made a lot more sense to him to get up and go work for Truro than it did to drive into Halifax every day for an hour. There are certain things that we can't compete with in that. I get that. I get how that makes sense. If all my supports and my family, all that are in some place, so I get how that happens, right?
But we're competitive in a lot of things, Chief. You know, we have the Halifax Partnership, which is the economic driving arm of the municipality that are out there recruiting businesses to come here. Businesses that don't even know where Halifax is, not to mention, you know, Nova Scotia, and come here. And so they're very competitive with that. And once people take inventory of what we have to offer, we're able to compete with some very big cities. Right?
Like I say, it's a competitive landscape that's competitive across like I said, the last few officers I get, I think 2 were from Ontario and 1 was from maybe Alberta in terms of, you know, like, so they come from all over, but at the same time, we're in direct competition with the RCMP, with everyone in terms of that's just the
Right, I
reality
understand.
of.
Thank you for that. In the budget, the last time we talked about budget here at the chambers, there was a number that expressed what's the number of the budget increase regardless if we were to add any bodies that you're asking for. So you're asking for 8 more bodies, but the budget's going up anyway, right? And that's based on just collective agreements, correct?
Well, it's not so much even collective agreements. I think it's contractual pressures and inflationary stuff.
And what's that number again?
What
was it again? Sorry.
I think it's 1.8%, but I'll give it's 1.85%. The actual number is, bear with me.
1.82.
2%. Yeah.
Yeah. If inflation today is 2%,
Yeah.
it will be 2% in the next 3 years.
Okay. I think it's just really important as we proceed that we keep reminding folks of that. Look,
1.8 million, 1.8%. So,
Yep.
so it's good enough.
you know, part of our job here is to, yes, look at, you know, the execution of services. It's also to examine the budgets asked here today. But I think also part of our job is to help both of you to be prepared when this eventually goes to regional council. You know, and so a lot of my questions are around that preparation. First of all, Chief, I really want to thank you for talking about, I think your words was walkabout. Let's not talk about wellness, but walk about wellness. And there's no secret to the folks around these rooms that I talk about the mental health wellness of all of our first responders, but also putting these workers on that you're looking to increase. These are also frontline responders, and that's sometimes forgotten. They have access to the same kind of mental health services as sworn officers, everybody else. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we've learned over time in terms of, because it's on, in terms of, you know, I remember back, you know, something traumatic would happen and we would make sure we send our, you know, our EFA people to the scene and do all that other stuff. And we forget about the people that actually
Absolutely, yeah.
took the information, you know, communicated the information, but then actually really cared about the people they sent to that, you know, so I think we've gotten better at that. Are we perfect? Probably not perfect at anything, but I think we've gotten better at recognizing that's an important part of the things that we need to do.
You know, I look into the chair here at some point in time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, you know, we get through this budget time to come back to, as a discussion piece, the whole mental health supports and issues around everyone that works in the police departments, both those departments and all folks, not only the sworn officers. I appreciate you continue to talk about that, Chief. So in your presentation, one of your slides, just want to confirm the numbers of staff full-time in this department. It's 75.5, is that correct? You're looking at 8. Did I read that correctly? Is that a yes?
It's 68 full-time employees, and then there are 15 part-time positions, which would equal to 7.5.
So, oh, I see, yeah, okay.
86 and a half.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
That's why I brought them.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to them in a second too. You know, in this preparation of going to the budget committee, maybe you got the CEO that is sitting to your right, Chief. Every business unit is asking, okay, what do you need to operate? But where's the belt tightening, right? And you already made reference to it. The only way to reduce budget is reduce bodies. But could you just share with us, because you're going to be asked this question when you come to the budget committee. You know, where are the savings? Where is the belt tightening? Where have you looked at? What have you not chosen to proceed with? What, you know, what examination is, and because that you will be asked when we get into budget committee about that, as every department will be. And, you know, much of that is Jerry's pushing every department to look at that. That's his job to do so.
Again, you know, to answer your questions in terms of the overwhelming majority of our budget is people. So the only real reduction in savings is reducing human resources. So it's around, you know, all the things I spoke about. I don't think we can go with less IES people.
Right.
You know, you've read the letter, you know, you've talked about traffic enforcement and retail crime. So I
Right.
don't think we can go without them.
Right.
I'm guessing we're going to do a CID review. That's not going to say we can do a little less of them in
Right.
terms of what the number of levels that we do. Our community response officers, you know, and where we have vacancies in terms of, you know, so we spread them around so that no one particular area is, you know, feeling the blight more than anyone else, right? In terms of, you know, I would like to have all, you know, my goal at some point, you know, before I leave here, hopefully, is to the best of my ability, because, you know, things are always fluid and there's always going to be retirements, people that we are at the point where we filled most just about it, you know, except for a couple here or there, like in terms
Right.
of, but it's not an overnight solution. Like it takes a while to turn around, but it is about, you know, our community response officers, you know, you know, I don't think we can do it less of them.
Right.
Right. You know, the frontline response members, again, we're using overtime in frontline response in terms of patrol officers now, because that they bear a big brunt of you know, where vacancies lie and where people aren't available. Like, you know, those are the people that when people do call them, those are the ones that actually go. So, you know, I don't, you know, I think over the years we have looked at specific areas and looked at where we can, you know, look at where we can get some reductions in folks. I don't think we are at a place. I don't think we are an organization, despite that what some folks may think in terms of that's just overbloated with all this excess of like my people work hard, like in terms of, you know, the amount of calls they go to, the amount of things that happen, you know, weekend updates of, you know, a couple hundred calls a weekend in terms of constantly going, in terms of, you know, working with the RCMP and them working with us, you know, and all this, you know, and a growing community in terms of that's adding 10, 15, 20,000 people every year. There are swaths of trees out there that will soon be, you know, 2,000 people living in the community.
Right.
Right. Now, will all 2,000 of those people need police response? Of course they won't. But at some point they will, like in terms of, and fire response and all these other things. Right. So I don't think that this is a question of, like, I've never come in here in the times of I did and asked for something just for the sake of asking for it.
Yep.
You know,
Understand that.
I've come in here, I think, with, you know, and not everyone may agree with me, and that's fine. But, you know, I've come in here and asked for things that I think we actually needed. Last year, I was asking for things that weren't police up, but were support the police officers behind the scenes, or support to the public behind the scenes,
Yes.
actually,
Yep.
in certain regards, right? So I think we've done that, and I think we do that exercise every year, actually, in terms of when we have these conversations. I can guarantee you, when I sit around with my senior staff, when we start talking about budget, and like, you know, Councillor Hinch says, budget seems to be never ending, like it never seems to end. Like
Right.
we're always in this phase in terms of, I can tell you that the requests come in a lot more than what they come to you folks when I sit down here in terms of, you know,
I understand.
but at this, you know, because at the same time, we're like, let's deliver public safety, let's work with our communities, but let's also recognize we are a partner in the greater HRM and all these other things. So there is a sweet spot in there somewhere in terms of working all together. It's not about asking for what you think you can get. It's about asking for what you think you need.
Thank you for that, Chief. Just very quickly, a couple more. I know I encouraged the tour to happen with commissioners, and I'm glad some took advantage of that. Has this current council, we have a number of first-term councilors, have they toured the facility?
I'm
Do you know?
not sure. I
You're
can't.
looking behind.
Maybe you would know.
I've only been in my position
Yeah.
since June.
Yeah.
So I can only speak to,
Maybe we can take that offline, because I think we worthwhile exercise to offer a tour for
Yeah.
first-term councilors, right? And finally, Chief, you alluded to having some folks from IES there here. I'd like to hear from them. Would you mind if I ask them for a couple of questions?
So I want to be clear though.
Yep.
Before we go, and it's up to them.
Yep.
I want to be clear. They weren't brought here in any sense to provide some sort of emotional.
No,
They're
no,
here,
no,
they're
no.
here simply because
Yep.
Greg Robertson, who would be here, is away.
Yep, no, that's fine.
And I needed someone here that could answer the questions
I
that
get
I
you.
don't know,
Yeah.
right? And that's who we have.
Yeah.
So, but by all means, if they're willing to come up and speak, that they're certainly
Yep.
welcome to. I don't know, you want to sit, come sit, take my seat. Yeah. Take a
Sorry,
seat.
is there a question that we're trying to answer just
Me,
before?
I wanted to ask them a question specifically about the operations.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Have a seat at the front desk. You don't have to go. No. Thanks to both of you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but maybe you could introduce yourself and service and all that also. But I think it's important. Yummy and others visited and got to see firsthand, and over the years I've visited numerous times and got to meet people. And I did hear, I hear about the budget constraints, the fatigue piece, and the ramifications that. Can you just tell me about the job? It can be at a very high level. The people, I'd like to hear about that fatigue part and the impact that has on the work that you do, just at a very high level. And I don't want you to address any trauma that you or your colleagues may have had, just to understanding the job. We all assume, we all see what's on TV, but we don't do the job. We're not experts in what you do. And so I think it's important that we do understand the job a little better.
I'm Leah Roach, I'm the manager, and this is Tracy McKay. She's our training and QA supervisor.
Okay.
I have 31 years of service. 22. So the job of a call taker, it sounds very basic. I mean, they're answering 911 and our non-emergency calls. But it's a lot more than that. They're required to keep your caller calm, be reassuring to them, as well as at the same time trying to interrogate them to get the information that you need so that you can prioritize the call, determine if it should even be a call. Sometimes they have to be referred to other agencies. It may be a parking complaint that goes down to 311, for example. It may be something that goes to 211. So they do that, they prioritize it, then they continue to get more information. They assess all the officer safety needs. Then the dispatcher is giving out the call to an actual officer or a firefighter in our case. They also transfer calls to ambulance. While the dispatcher is doing all that, they're also checking our system to see if, on a high level, if there's any issues with the people or the plates or anything, if anything's stolen or there's any conditions or anything. They're checking our system to see if there's any hazards on the system. So if there's a warning that there's an issue that they need to be aware of, a hazard at that address. They're checking for other information we have on the system. It might be that the address has, you have to enter off the back. They're looking
Right.
for that stuff. They're looking at the prior calls to see if they need to adjust their response for the officers. If we've been there 5 or 6 times for domestics, that's a kind of a thought for us to, maybe adjust the response. It's kind of a high level. The fatigue that goes with it, as I explained to those who came yesterday, you're going in, you might take a domestic call, you may hang up from that, you may take a parking complaint, you may hang up from, it's just one call after another. And because they answer, we only have stats on 2 of our lines. So the call numbers that you see are 911 and our non-emergency line. We answer alarm lines. So every time an alarm company calls once,
Oh, right, yeah,
we put a
yeah.
call in, then they always call back a second time to update it or give context. So that's another 2 calls for every alarm call we get. And we take calls from other agencies, basically any of our other lines. We take calls from the RCMP, we take calls from EHS. Our fire dispatchers are answering their own fire calls for ambulance response. And then we're making our outgoing calls to all of the other agencies that we need. If we're at an accident, the road needs to be salted, we're calling those as well. There's a lot going on with the call takers, and they have to do all of that while remembering all of their SOPs. They have SOPs for the province for 911. They have SOPs for fire. They have SOPs for police. Both RCMP and HRP
Right.
do have some differences. They're remembering all of that. put all that together, along with the rate of the calls they're taking, trying to deal with the callers who, I mean, let's be honest, nobody's ever calling the police or fire because having a good day.
Right.
They're always calling. They're upset. We get a lot now of people, I don't even want to say that a lot of people are abusive to our call takers.
Is that right?
I don't even know. We've discussed it
Yeah,
numerous
people
times.
people are not pleasant when they call us anymore. Back in the day when I first started, people, were calling for help. They were calling for assistance. And now if they're not getting the help and assistance instantly, then it's our fault and we've ruined their lives and swearing at us and yelling at us. And, not to interrupt Leanne, she gave a very high level. I can give you a very low level because I still do the job.
Okay.
Not every day, but I'll walk out and I'll see that it's crazy. And the main things that our call takers are doing is this is what they want to do when they took the job. They want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the best they can to help the people. There's where the fatigue comes in because they can't help every person because the phones are ringing off the hooks. As a dispatcher, your priorities are officer safety and protection of people and property. And when you don't have enough people out there to do that, enough people answering the phone, and you can't get up and use the washroom, that's where the fatigue comes in.
Wow.
And things are, I wouldn't say more violent, but it's just people have lost, somewhat of the ability to deal with things since COVID, which, they're calling us to help them deal with it. And, like anywhere, there's not enough people anywhere, and our call takers are being abused.
Well, look, I thank you both for that. I think it's important that we hear that and understand that. And I thank you both for your service very much, and everybody that you work with. Thank you very much. Chair, thanks for leading us, allowing them to come forward. I appreciate that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to ask Commissioner Hinch if she had any questions for the chief related to his service enhancement request.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I can't help but feel Commissioner Akindosha was just trying to drill me. I felt like you drilling me directly to understand what this really means. I do understand what this really means. So one of my questions is with the body worn camera and the vehicle cameras. This is part of the budget, correct? Is it part of this budget? That's what I'm trying to understand. I see it there.
It was approved last year.
This was approved last
Yes.
year. Okay, all right, okay. So is this strictly for the 8 civilians? Or
Yes.
For the 8 civilians?
Well, the service enhancement.
The
It's a service enhancement. It is part of the budget.
But they are civilian led.
Just body worn camera initiative is part of the budget, a formalized budget, but we're discussing on the motion, the service enhancements.
Okay.
Just for clarity.
Which is civilian led, correct?
In terms of the body worn camera initiative?
All positions of, no, the service request.
Oh, yes, those are all civilian positions within the IES.
They're all
Yeah.
just the folks that were just talking.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my thing. If it wasn't HRPD asking for this request, and say if they were in a unit all by themselves, I believe it wouldn't be a problem. We would just automatically approve this right now, right there. I am going to approve it. I am going to approve it because, again, it's civilian led. Unfortunately, it's under HRPD where a lot of my constituents, a lot of the residents are having difficulty with, we're giving way too much money to HRPD and HRD and all this stuff. But I mean, I understand that, and I truly believe that in this particular incident, it's a no-brainer. I watch 911. I don't know how level it is up there, but I can truly understand. I've been in a type of, prior to being here, I worked for Metro Regional Housing Authority. I know how aggressive some folks can be, and I understand exactly what you are all going through. So I can't help but not to support this. So yeah, that's all I need to say right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to invite Commissioner Moore, who would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Commissioner. You kind of set me up with what I wanted to say. So Don, Chief McLean is the one providing the presentation on these enhanced because that dispatch center is in the police department. So full disclosure, I was the first director. It was a standalone business unit way back in 2005. I was the first director and it stood alone. And then through a whole bunch of jigs and reels, emergency management ended up going towards fire and the communication center ended up in police. So that's the history of how it got into police. But I want to just emphasize in my role as having oversight of the regional fire, of the regional police, of the Halifax District RCMP, that service, IES, supports all of those services. And they're supporting the community as the first line of contact. When you're having a bad day and you dial 911, most calls, if it's going to happen HRM, are going to get picked up by one of the staff that are working there. So that is the level of service. The other piece is on the dispatching side, they are the ones that are supporting all the first responders that are out on the road. So when RCMP is calling for help, they're calling to one of those people to get more help on the radio. So I just want to make that all very clear. The part of this ask is for the employee wellness, and I think Don said it very, very well. In my experience, if I had a bad day, I had the chance to get out of a car and go to have a cup of coffee or go for a walk or something. The staff there, the calls will just keep coming in and coming in. Now, not to say they can't have a short break, but they're in that room for 12 hours. So, you know, this is near and dear to my heart. Put it right on the table. I should probably declare a conflict at the beginning.
Nope,
but
no need.
But this is a service level that I feel very strongly is supportive of all of HRM, not just, and I understand the comments made by some of the individuals about the policing budget, but this is bigger than just an HRP budget ask. And the last thing I will touch on this is when we looked at the fifth.
That an injury as the example, but there's multiple things. And I hope that you and your team can work on those things to make sure that there is things. I know they have EPA. They can call and get help there. Commissioner Moore talked about what it's like in there. They don't have big breaks. They got a lunch break and then they're stuck in there. There's all kinds of things. I don't have the answer, but just throw some out. Like, look at the environment. Can you change the environment? Can you make it a little bit easier for them to cope with things in there? Other things are like, is there a way to incorporate any other of those services in the province into one to help out? I'm just throwing those out there, but I think that we need to look at it from the point of it's a laceration. We'll put a Band-Aid on it, stop the bleeding is the first part, but we have to make sure that it heals properly. And so this year, maybe the 8 people are what we have to do, but we need to look long-term.
No, to that point, I think wellness is a holistic thing. Like there's no one response. So when I talk about on Monday, we were at the Respectful Workplace. Respectful Workplace is part of that. And there were IES folks that were there at that to speak to. Employee engagement is important about, you know, the things that you know, we've started an initiative called the Little Things Initiative in terms of the employee engagement. What are those little things we can do on a daily basis that will make your day a little bit better, right? In terms of, so all kind of, IES is included in all of that. Like they are, like I say, an integral part of what is going, is everything going to get, you know, if I could change the part about, you know, disrespectful people calling there and all that, if I could do that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably be having my own island somewhere in terms of, you know, because those are the same people our people come into, when I say our people, our police, sworn people, and his people come into contact with on the streets, you know, in terms of, you know, that, and that's a bigger issue. But I take your point in terms, I think there are multiple things that we can try to do to make things better. And I think it's a journey. It's a continuum that's continual, and probably one that you'll never get to the end. But if you keep striving to do things a little bit better, then, you know, that's a good thing.
Yeah, thanks. For me, I've been where you are, on the other side, and then talking to them and them helping me. So I understand. And then to go in there yesterday and see how they're hurting from the time I looked around and said, thank goodness I was outside taking the call and not inside. Inside, I think, is harder.
It's tough.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, who's sitting in my chair, talking to the vice chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I like the way Commissioner Mancini put it a little while ago, asking questions to help you ready and prepare for council. And some of my questions that I'm going to ask are really about what other scenarios have you looked at about solving the problem that you're experiencing today? So I don't want you to take the questions as being that I have an opinion of not supporting or supporting. It's not the intention behind the question. First question I wanted to ask, though, is a little bit higher than level than that, and that is in the 26-27 budget. I know you're involved in collective negotiations right now. Does the numbers for the salaries in that 26-27 budget have any anticipation for outcomes from the collective bargaining, or will that automatically be added in at a later date?
That's probably a Jerry question or a Dave question. I think I know the answer to it, but
Yeah.
they really know the answer to it.
I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it officially.
Dave Harney, Director of Financial Management and Operations for HRM. So when we build our budget, we always have collective agreements that are outstanding and that we're looking to accommodate within our budget. So what we do is, for the purposes of the individual business units, we don't allocate those unknowns to them.
Okay.
What we do have some allowances that we build it into our, what we call our fiscal business unit, to kind of cover off any potential increases that may occur. So that's where we capture those. They wouldn't be captured within the individual business unit. What's captured in their compensation budget is strictly based on what would be built into the existing collective agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that helps. That's what I assumed it was. It means that by the time that this budget is considered by council, the number will be higher, potentially.
Potentially, yes. So,
Yeah.
so there's
As
like
a
I said, there's
result,
some
outcome or
allowances
outcome,
for
whatever the negotiated amounts might turn in terms of the collective bargaining. There could be a northward pressure on that. Okay,
Yep.
thanks. That was the last of those questions. My other questions are really about scenarios that you've considered. So, Commissioner Bezic-Escalard brought up the NENA standard about 911 call processing, and that, the standard is 90% of the calls are answered in 15 seconds, 95% are answered in 20 seconds. And right now today for 911 calls, we're answering 99.9% of the calls within 15 seconds. 20 seconds, which is a phenomenal level. Like that's well above what the industry expects. Now, I realize that the amount of people that are actually answering the calls is a small percentage of the overall staff complement that work within the center. But I wanted to ask, NG911 is coming. There are a lot of benefits from NG911. Everything from faster call routing, reduced non-emergency call burden. There's a whole bunch of things that have been proven to make organizations more efficient. My ask is, have you considered the potential benefits that will be coming down the road when NG911 gets implemented in terms of this resource ask?
I guess the simple answer is I'm not really sure what those benefits would be until such time that they're actually borne out, right? Part of the challenge is there's a lot of good things that can happen with things, and there's unintended consequences of even those good things that we're not really sure. So like I said earlier, in terms of, next gen, I'm not really sure, the ability to send pictures and all this other stuff that may come with this, all that, maybe it'll be an increased burden actually on folks that are actually dealing with some of these things. Or, I guess we need to really see how that, I think it's kind of like when we talk about alternative response around care and all those other things, right? We automatically say, oh, they'll go do it now, the police don't have to, right? Well, do we actually know that? Like we know that there'll be some things that they can do, but on the flip side to it is, will it lead to other things that we have to make sure that, so I think we have to see how some of these things wear themselves out. Like I've said it many times before, like when it comes to that, I don't think it's an either or. It's like, I think it's still a collaborative effort. And I honestly don't know enough about NG911 to provide any real informed sort of, and I know it's supposed to be coming next year. Hopefully it does, but we'll see. But there's a lot of, new things. We talk about you know, we talked about the policing standards, or not the standards, but the policing review, and we're talking about one RMS system for the entirety of the province. What impact will that necessarily perhaps have on, because we don't know what that's going to be, right? So there's all kinds of moving parts that come to this. I understand kind of what you're saying, and there have been some things we've looked at around scheduling in terms of, you know, so prompt hours, and there's some discussions we're actually having in bargain that I can actually speak to that hopefully will alleviate some issues as well. But you know, that's
going to be one of my next questions, actually.
yeah, well, I could anticipate it coming, and I already want to decide to ask it.
Before we get there, though, the next question I had related to, I think it's on slide 14, where we showed the number of non-emergency incidents being reported online. So right now, about 70% of the calls that come into the center that are being answered, obviously, that are non-emergency calls. And right now, there's about, I think it varied, but it actually decreased this year. I think somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 calls are coming in and being reported online. And again, part of the due diligence ask, what have we done, or what do we plan to do to drive more non-emergency calls to online reporting?
Yeah, so to that point, we've currently invested in a new vendor, and part of looking at three things around. One of them is online reporting. One of them is assisting with security background checks, helping our security background team, and the other part is around criminal records checks that provide a full service suite in terms of things. So once I'm talking very new, like within the last week new, in terms of, so as we start to move that, well, I think we'll be in a better place to look at how we can make a more robust online experience for folks. I think that's actually important. When I went to the CACP this year, and maybe even at the CAPG, in terms of, you know, there was a proliferation of vendors out there around AI reporting and all this other stuff, right? And I think, and I actually did a demo with one of them to see, and I think, you know, I don't think they're there yet in terms of some of the issues, because I think it still requires a support mechanism and sort of some low level things. But, you know, I think, you know, as the future becomes, I think, you know, things around AI, online reporting, all those other stuff, you know, will become important things that we look at in terms of, as we, you know, start, you know, talking about policing in the future, drones as a first responder.
Yeah.
There's all, you know, body worn camera, you know, all these things that are sort of, you know, we talked about the other day, I mentioned the bill, like there are things that police do now that we wouldn't even, we couldn't even contemplate it, you know, 30 some odd years ago. Like, you know, what are you talking about? Right. So, but that's the reality. I think, you know, policing is going to move, you know, at a quick space, but at the same time, I caution in terms of policing fundamentally is still about dealing with people at a human level, in terms of, you know, these other things are helps, supports to help us do that job, but we can't lose sight of that fact, you know, for all the things that we've talked about earlier in terms, I think is still important.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm just trying to ask questions in line with what the Commissioner Mancini, Deputy Mayor Mancini comment about, you know, readying for these other sorts of questions, because there's great budget pressure this year. I mean, you just have to turn on the news and there's significant pressure in front of our councillor counterparts here who have to make some tough decisions. On slide 21, it identifies the staffing levels as being 2 supervisors, an assignment, I should say, not staffing level, of 17 ERCs and 4 part-time ERCs to each watch. And so that equates to about 21, you know, resources. And I think I heard somebody say 15 was the minimum. 14 you needed on the floor. And so we have vacations, we have illnesses. So we don't have that's the number that's potentially available, but it slips down because of all these different factors that we're trying to address. I guess my question is, does this additional 2 resources, are you asking to increase the operating model from 14 to 16? Or is just this additional resources to help fill the need, to meet the need of the 14?
No, I think initially we're looking at just getting to where, on a more constant basis, without the use of overtime, getting to where we need to be on a daily basis.
Okay, so we're not trying to increase the.
No,
right.
because if I was
So-
actually trying to do that, I'd probably have to ask for double that.
Right.
To be.
So if everybody showed up for work one day, we could have, you know, we need 14 and we could have 23 people there.
Could.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
capacity is there.
Yeah. The capacity.
The capacity in terms of physical space and
Oh.
that sort of, because it's a finite space, right?
Right, but
couldn't
there's
put 100
finite amount of
people
equipment that's in the
finding,
room
you know,
to- for them to work
consoles and all
from.
that other stuff, you know. And we're in the
Okay.
process now, I think, that, did you get your new console? They being put in?
more desks are coming.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I guess the other question I had related to the shift model. We heard people were fatigued. I get that. I mean, that'd be tough sitting there 12 hours and not knowing what the next call is, dealing with the previous call. And I have a question related to that in a sec, but I wanted to ask, have you considered other operating or staffing models other than just a 12-hour? Did you look at 8-hour? Did you look at 10-hour?
So
Did
those
you look
are-
at more part-time resources as
So
opposed to FTEs?
both of those things are governed by the contract.
Okay,
You have a finite number of part-timers that we're allowed to have. We can only have up to a certain number according to the contract.
oh, wow.
And as well, the 4-on, 4-off model has sort of been a holy grail of, I guess, for lack of a better word, in terms of, that's a contractual.
That's in the contract as
Oh,
well?
100%. Yeah, that's a contractual issue.
Have you explored that with these
Well-
resources that are doing that, whether that's the lifestyle they want?
Well, I don't want, when you're in the middle of contract negotiation, this isn't the place to talk about it.
Okay,
But
all right.
at the end of the day, it's,
I can do either. Okay, I'll come back. Thank you. Thank you for the patience.
Commissioner Akindoju, and then I'll be followed by Commissioner Carter. You don't want to speak? Okay, I know I do. Anyone else while we're here? Okay, thank you.
There's some few things I would love to say. I'm going to be attending a program in the US, in one of the biggest universities in December, looking at what this environment really is for us as human beings or business owners or business operators. The real sense of it is that human capital needs, I'm not going to use the word change, but has shifted. If you take an average age of the people in this room, we probably know Gen Z here. You see, you do not know what we are going to be dealing with in the future. You're talking about people working 12 hours. I run a factory. I have 50 people in my factory. The issue of long-term sickness, my chair, you cannot change it. It's here, it's a problem. We need to start thinking. The issue of AI did not just come, has a positive, but has its own negative. It has to replace us, the older people. We are the AIs of the world today, because you and I can work 34 hours. The lady I was talking to yesterday, 33 years, 20-something years. You go and hire Gen Z. They love the job. They are knowledgeable. They can turn this around, but they will be there when they want to be there. No, it's not. You see, we are speaking to the public because we don't take decisions to just say, yes, vote for this. No, I have spent time, quality time, looking at this budget and why I want to support it, given the public's opinion that we're not sitting down here just doing anything. But the reality must be spoken. So when I was talking, I said, please listen to the public. I'm addressing you. I've looked at the figures, the figures itself. Generally, there were savings in the actuals. But what we are dealing with now, look, the chairman talked about what we are looking for 8 more people in that sector. Probably average cost is $94,000 a year per person. In the next 4 years, I've gone to the extent, inflation, incremental cost is 1 million. It's about 936. That is what we're talking about now. That those 8 people will only cost us 1 more million. And we're here talking about it. But I'm saying, when you start to replace them with Gen Z, they won't work 12 hours. Your money, they don't need it, money. I know my daughter dropped a job that thousands of dollars because she was in the air all the time. We need to sit down and start to think what happens tomorrow. Let's deal with today with the facts. But it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Nobody's going to sit down and work 12 hours. I classify it clearly. high-risk jobs. It's not, and I want to correct the fact. It's not because uniform or no uniform. Both of them are doing high-risk job. Nurses, doctors, they are fatigued. Totally. I don't want to use my example. I've not spoken to my son. He's been on call 2 days. He's just 32. So those are high-risk jobs that now we are planning to use AI to take their places because we cannot use human beings anymore. It's becoming too tough. And we need to start thinking about that. We need to start looking at what do we do in the future to keep safety in place. That's why I changed the name to Strategic Network. People will call, and maybe in this department, it's easier to start thinking about it because there's one thing now, I think the government uses it, it's a Microsoft email that thinks ahead of you, picks up all your other emails and summarizes your current email. So maybe this is what we should be thinking about, who can pick a call, interpret it, and pass it out without human beings. We should be thinking about that now, honestly. But for this little thing that we're looking at, it's impossible to think we can resolve this. The dollar value is not the issue. The bigger picture is tomorrow. Okay, and that's why I said this is a real need, and these are real people that we are dealing with. So I'll close my case again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Nobody else. I'm going to go back to the chair.
Thank you. Just a couple of quickies, which I could have finished earlier, I guess. Get it out. Yeah, get it out. No, I do support the ask, but I want to make sure that of the things that I started to bring up, that, you know, you seek to find ways to do more with the resources that you have. And that, you know, we talked about a couple of them there. And then in terms of the resources themselves, in the tour the other day, and I always think back, there was a conference here, APCO conference, and the Telecommunicators of the Year who won the award were from Hamilton. When the former chief was from Hamilton, he gave the award. And they won the award they had somebody who was caught up in human trafficking, was, you know, being imprisoned basically in Hamilton, and managed to get access to a phone, didn't even know what city they were in, called into 911, different language. And the 911 operators in the IES equivalent used a bunch of different creative methods to help try and narrow down where the person was calling from. You know, sending vehicles in certain areas with certain siren types, certain lights, no lights. And they eventually located the person and rescue, you know, and then so first responders could rescue them from the human trafficking situation that they were in. It was quite a remarkable thing. So there's a lot of creativity that happens in terms of solving problems. Yeah.
Similar type.
Yeah.
Situation.
So it's just.
She got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got a picture, was able to track down. This is where it was because of.
Yeah.
So really creative and smart.
Yeah, very creative. So when the bad calls happen, just my last question is there a place for people to go to decompress after a bad call? You know, go have their time so that, okay, good. I didn't ask that the other day when we were doing the tour because that's important. Place to be able to go to have a few minutes to, you know, recover. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to just have a final remark. Sure. Do you want me to do it from here or over there? Yeah, so my final remark is that I believe strongly in everything that everyone today has said, including all of you. I want to thank the dispatch folks for taking the time to come today and sharing your stories with us. I know that sometimes those situations are tough. I can't remember what the other part was that I wanted to say, so Thank you both for the great presentations. Ah, shoot, I can't remember it. It's okay. Mr. Chair, the chair is yours.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any other comments or questions? Barring none, Commissioner Bezic-Escalard, did you want to close things off? Since oh, okay, before you do that, I believe Vice Chair Kent has a final closing
Yes,
comment.
yes. This is for you, Chief. I want to give you kudos. And for what I discovered today, which I think it's an important piece to put this in perspective. You reminded us that you didn't come looking for sworn officers last year. You're not coming looking for sworn officers this year. And I think that's exactly what from my perspective, what is so necessary. You have to also take care of the engine that's in behind the service members who are out on the street and on the beat. And that's what you're doing. So I thank you for that. And I'm not sure how long it had been in this police service to have that happen. And, we were lucky to have you as acting chief. We have you as chief now. And I just want to note that as an important impact that you're already having. So thank you for coming forward with that kind of approach last year and this year. We'll see what you do next year.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bezic-Escalard, did you want to close this off?
Sure thing. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Chief, and thank you to the IES team for being here. I personally regret that I wasn't able to visit before the meeting today, but thank you for sharing all of your work and for your service as well. I think, Chair, your point that the questions that we ask are not to poke at the budget or for fun, but it's really part of our role to ensure accountability and really to prove to the public and to enable the council to support the needs that you all know our community has. So thank you both, Chief and Chief Superintendent, for your presentations today. Thank you.
Call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Oh, was he? Noted. Moving on. I don't believe there's any added items from number 11. No in camera today, correct? No. And any notices of motion? No. Next meeting date is November the 12th, which is a regular meeting. So that we had a tentative meeting for November 5th, so that's not required. And call for which one? Oh, okay. Move to adjourn. We're done. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.